Okay, this December 20th, 2017 meeting of the Oyster River Cooperative School Board will come to order. I'm told that the streaming is not working, so this will be, I guess, able, be recorded, but the streaming is not working. The first order of business is the approval of the agenda. Sue has asked that the ORPAS agreement be put earlier in the agenda, so my recommendation is we put that right after the approval of minutes, because she needs that approval then to calculate the budget later on in the meeting. So is that agreeable? Mm-hmm. Okay. With that change, could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Denise?
I motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Moved by Denise. Is there a second? Second by Brian. All in favor, please raise your hands. 7 in favor. The agenda is approved. And I should mention that Hannah Jane cannot be here. She's ill. She sent me her report, and we wish her the best. Okay, public comment?
I'm Dean Rubine from Lee. Happy holidays, everybody. I'm thrilled I get to be here first to congratulate Superintendent Morse for being named by the New Hampshire School Administrators Association in coordination with the American Association of School Administrators, the 2018 New Hampshire Superintendent of the Year. You guys have cake planned and a big thing, so I'm sorry I ruined it. We know he's been so great the last 5 years. We've all been here. But what I want to know is how they know what's going to happen in 2018. I think the jury's still out on 2018. But I'm really glad they ignored my letter about how long it took to move the school bus line. And made you Superintendent of the Year. We think you're Superintendent of the Year every year. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dean.
I do have a sick kid at home, so thank you. My name is Anita Mather. I am the founder and president of the Oyster River Alumni Association, and I also have a kindergartner in the school district. I'm here actually wearing my hat of the Oyster River Alumni Association today, which is quite exciting. For those of you who don't know about the Alumni Association, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that supports alumni and current students of the Oyster River Cooperative School District. Part of our mission is to encourage Oyster River schools to develop innovative curriculum that we believe will strongly benefit Oyster River graduates over the course of their lifetime. I'm here just to throw our support in strong favor of the development of an adventure education curriculum at Oyster River High School. We hope that adequate funding can be provided through the district budget to support the construction of a climbing wall and ropes course, which are necessary equipment for this new curriculum. The Alumni Association believes that this experiential learning program will have multiple benefits for Oyster River students. Not only will it improve students' physical and technical skill level, but it will also impart essential life process skills such as self-confidence, trust, communication, and teamwork. In addition, an adventure education curriculum will help connect students with nature and the outdoors, a relationship we feel is vitally important for a person's mental health and well-being at all stages of life. We realize that the cost of a climbing wall and ropes course will be significant. However, we believe that the investment in these essential mind and body skills for the future alumni of Oyster River is well worth it. This statement has been approved by our whole board of directors of the Alumni Association. I'm going to briefly list their names. Stephen Wargiotis, Oyster River class of 91. Matthew Smith, Oyster River class of 2004. Jamie Alford, Oyster River class of 1994. Bridget Began, Oyster River class of 2009. Christopher Gerard, Oyster River class of 1993. Benjamin Hardy, Oyster River class of 1995, Robin Galt, class of 1995, and Jeffrey Lang, class of 1995. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Nita.
Thank you. Good evening, William Hall, Durham. I noticed down here at the end, you've got tobacco products strictly prohibited, drug and alcohol use by students. I hope that turns out to be a zero tolerance policy. We don't pay $100 a student, $1,500 a day to have, or $2,000 a day to have a classroom inhabited by people who are not paying attention. I'll put it that way. I know people, as Dr. Morse does, whose lives are just destroyed for abuse, particularly drugs. I don't believe that we should allow on any more marijuana any more than we allow tobacco. And the idea that you can study in school with something going on in your head is crazy. And the jobs I've done, if you make a mistake, you're dead. As an electrician, we've lost a person at the candy factory, another person in Newington. You touch the wrong thing and you don't come out alive. And the idea that someone is going to be doing electrical work and have some sort of mind-altering experience is about as crazy as you can get. Other things like driving a school bus, driving a car. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Good evening. Sandra Hebert, Durham. And I'm here tonight to speak about the possibility of the football cooperative agreement having to go to a warrant article. But first, let me thank the board for opening up their eyes and their ears to the possibility of football. The proponents of football are beginning to feel as though their voices are being heard and are being treated at the same level as any other parent group looking out for the best interest of their children. However, the talk of the warrant article leaves me scratching my head. As I recall, the girls' hockey team entered into a cooperative agreement with Portsmouth recently, and no warrant article was needed. Has there been any sport, activity, or club that has had to be voted on by the entire Oyster River community to be added? I realize that football has been a hot topic, but so was the later start time. The later start time affected every student in the district, not to mention the increased cost to all taxpayers with the need of more school bus drivers. This one change had a great impact on our community as a whole, and yet the change was solely dependent on your decision. I'm going to digress a little bit and tell a story. As a child growing up in the 70s, my world included good stuff like Tang and Wonder Bread. And this was until my mother read a book called Sugar Blues, and like a switch, my Oreo cookies turned into carob nut cookies made with whole wheat flour. I recall my sisters and I griping about our mother's new health kick and making statements such as, "Next thing you know, we'll find out the sun is bad for us." Eventually, the classic Toll House cookie came back as a treat, but we never did see Wonder Bread again. And this is because life is about finding a balance and compromising. Today, we know the sun causes cancer, and if I was to take my kids to the beach without offering them any sort of protection, I may be called a child abuser or at best neglectful. However, if I throw a hat on them, teach them how to apply sunscreen properly, we can now spend the day tide pooling, making sandcastles, playing in the waves, and going for walks and looking for seashells. I've taken my kids out of the house and away from electronics. I am now a good mom. The sun can be bad, but how we approach it truly affects the end result. Finding a balance, being open-minded, and looking at situations from all perspectives is important. We hope to elect school board members who will do just that. To look at a situation, a proposal, a new activity with open minds, and to make the tough decisions. The topic of football has been going on for a long time. It has created animosity, tension, and taken up a lot of our valuable time. Passing it off to a vote at the community level will only create more animosity and waste more time. This is the type of decision that should be and has consistently been made at the school board level. We ask that you treat football the same as any other activity, to weigh the pros and cons, to find the balance, to compromise, and to treat all equally.
I'm sorry.
To do otherwise would be considered biased. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Okay, can we move to?
No, there's one more.
One more? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Ellery Raitt. I'm from Madbury.
Can you say your name again?
I'm sorry?
Can you say your name again?
Ellery Raitt.
Thank you.
Raitt, R-A-I-T-T. I'm also speaking on behalf of support of the cooperative football agreement, and that the school board should vote on it as it has other items and not send it to warrant article. I played football as a kid. My son started, this was actually his first year, and the time he had was amazing, and he wants to continue doing that, but obviously at this time cannot in the Oyster River School District. There's risk in all sports: soccer, baseball, basketball, hockey, gymnastics. Everyone is at risk of a concussion no matter what sport they're in. My son has had a concussion, but it was not from playing any sports. It was from playing with his sister in the living room. There's risk in everything. There's risk getting in your car, driving to work. There's risk doing your job. Parents who want their kids to play football know the risks. They read the articles, they read the doctor's reports. We know what's going on, and we know there's risk, but we ask that we just be given the same chance as everybody else. That's all we're asking. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there other public comment? Okay. Could we move to the approval of the November 15th, 2017 minutes? And these were held, we weren't voted on because Kenny wanted to make sure that his statement was accurately represented. So Kenny, are you okay with the,
Well, we need to make a motion.
okay. Okay, Denise, go ahead.
I'll motion to approve the November 15th regular meeting minutes.
Okay, moved by Denise, is there a second? Second by Kenny? And it's the correction, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And I would also like to, there's a long, at the last meeting, we agreed that comments should be summarized consistently and that long letters or statements not be put in the minutes. And there is a long statement by Dr. Barth, and I've created a summary of that. And Laura, I don't know, could you read the summary? Which I would like to propose we substitute for the long statement, because our agreement was we wouldn't put those in. So Laura, could you read that?
Sure. Dr. Barth is in arguing that scientific studies have demonstrated the health risks of youth football. He urged the board to be informed of this science and to oppose any extension of football to Oyster River High School.
Okay. I think that's a summary consistent with other summaries. So with that change, could we vote on the approval of the November 15th minutes?
I would just want to add that that Dr. Barth did apologize if some of his comments were construed as being critical, because I think that was part of his statement. If we can just add that, because I think he started his presentation, and I think what he said did set off a kind of firestorm, and he did apologize for that.
I'm just trying to get the wording then. The statements created what? Were offensive to?
No, just say maybe just apologize for his previous comments if they offended anyone or something to that effect.
Maybe even the sentence, he said, the first sentence in what's here is, he wanted to apologize to anyone who took offense at his prior statements before the board.
Okay, could that sentence be added, Laura? Okay?
Is
Okay.
that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. So could we have a vote on the November 15th minutes as corrected? Or all those in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor, those minutes are approved. Could we move to the regular minutes for December 6th, 2017? Denise?
I move to approve the regular meeting minutes of December 6th.
Moved by Denise, is there a second? Second by Dan. Now, it seemed to me that if we go down to the very end of these, it was complicated because we had 2 non-public sessions. The first, I believe, dealt with negotiations, and the second dealt with Dr. Morse's evaluation. Is that people's understanding? Okay. So, so there should be something about going into non-public session for the purpose of the superintendent's evaluation. And I don't remember who made that motion, or whether we should just postpone and have somebody else. Is there any? But we moved to go into non-public in public session. Okay.
Yeah, because there were the two, we went in, first of all, for the collective bargaining, we came out of non-public, then we went back into non-public for the superintendent's evaluation. But I honestly don't remember who made the motions.
So the movement, Denise moved to a non-public session for collective bargaining.
For the
That should be
collective
that should be before the moving into non-public for the superintendent's evaluation. So the order should be flipped, right?
I believe so.
Yes.
What you just said, Tom, is consistent with what's in the non-public meeting minutes
Okay.
here as well.
Okay. And then my memory is we went into non-public for the collective bargaining. We reviewed the agreement. We came out of non-public. We voted 7-0 to approve the ORCSD agreement. Then we went back into non-public to do the superintendent's evaluation. Is that people's memory of that?
Correct.
Okay.
In the non-public minutes, the second one, it has us going, it has us why we went in and what the vote is. So that should actually be moved to the public minutes.
The 7-0 vote?
Yeah, it has like,
Right, the second 7-0 vote, right?
yeah, it's like at the very top of the non-public minutes. That should be moved into the public minutes. Does that make sense? It says, where it says Tom Newkirk moved to enter into non-public at 9:57 in accordance, and it has the RSA. And
Seconded by Brian.
Seconded by Brian, and it has
Oh, there
the
you
vote.
go.
So that's the actual public part as we
Right.
go into the non-public.
Right. So that should be part of the regular meeting
That
minutes.
should be part of the regular meeting minutes.
But should that be, like, that should be, but
I
you
think,
went into non-public and then back to public. So
Right.
do you want that to be on like a separate page?
no, but I think what you can do is where we went into non-public the first time,
Yeah.
which you described, you could say the board came back into non-public
Okay.
at 9:57, and then have those two paragraphs that are now separated and put those into public, because then we go back into non-public. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? It's,
Are you
Yeah,
following
that's exactly it. Or we can go over that if you want
yeah,
after.
I could explain that to you later too, but,
The first two, so those first two paragraphs should be in public.
Those should be
Exactly.
pasted.
and I would,
Above where it
and you
says
might want to
respect.
preface that by just saying the board went back into public session, and then Tom Newkirk moved to enter into non-public at 9:57 with that RSA,
And the
right?
vote for on ORCSD will be included in the public.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
'Cause that's the key thing, I think.
I cannot, for the life of me, remember who made those.
No.
Well, so it's all there in those
It's in the
first two
non-public,
paragraphs.
right, it's in the non-public, and it just needs to get shifted, yeah.
Into the
Okay,
book, right.
so Laura, do you have that?
I just feel bad that I have to watch that at home.
Okay. So are there other changes? Sorry, that's so confusing, but it was a little complicated going in and out. So any other changes? So could we vote on the December 6th minutes? All those in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor, those are approved. Could we go to the non-public minutes? Let's see.
So I'll move that we accept the two separate December 6th non-public meeting minutes.
Moved by
We can do them
Kenny.
together.
Is there a second? Second by Brian. Are there changes to those?
just as we described the changes.
So some, taking out the vote, okay. So if you take out the vote, that's going to be in public? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor. Both non-public meeting minutes have been approved. So now we have, by agreement, Sue with the ORPAS agreement. Is that right? You ready?
Did you want to go to non-public to do that, or are you comfortable staying in public?
I'm comfortable staying in public, and then if people want to, get into,
Okay.
Are you okay? Are we okay with that?
It's a pretty straightforward agreement, and there was nothing dramatic in it. Oops.
Oops, I guess I got one here. Thank you.
Okay.
All set.
I just outlined the details of our agreement with ORPAS. I don't know if, Tom, you were part of that negotiations. It's a 3-year agreement, again. There wasn't a whole lot of adjustments to this contract. Basically, we just discussed sick leave. One of the things they wanted to see was a sick leave donation bank like our other units have, and they wanted to add some time to their sick leave. We wanted to clarify that they are sick leave days and not vacation days, giving them 1 for personal business. So we added 3 sick leave days to their total. I think they just have a total of 10 now. And the other thing that they struggled with is their lack of pay when there's weeks off and summer vacation. So rather than pay them equal pay, which makes it difficult for the payroll department, we came up with the opportunity to allow them to save money for vacation. So vacation savings account, so each pay they could put away a little bit of money. So when we have a Christmas break, they could draw from that money. All of this would be outlined in the beginning of the year. They would set that up, and then also in the summer, they could save a little bit so they'd have money for the summer. That was the other thing.
So would that be similar to other types of, withdrawals?
It's a deduction.
Yeah, deduction.
Yes, it would be a deduction, correct.
It would be a
yes.
deduction.
It would be a deduction. We would run their payroll as a regular payroll, take all of their deductions. They would designate an amount they'd want to take out of their pay and put into that fund, and then they would also tell us early on that in the December pay, I want to take an extra $100 of that, and we'd lay that all out at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
And then the salary schedule, we didn't do a lot with changing the steps. The steps were pretty consistent. The only thing we did was we worked on the first couple of steps to get closer to a higher beginning wage, and then the people on the top step will get 50 cents. Rather than add steps to that salary schedule, we're agreeing to 50 cents for those that reach that top step as a raise for each year in the agreement. And that's it.
Kenny?
So just a couple of questions.
Sure.
So we're adding 3 sick days, and what was the prior?
7, they had 7.
So it's going from 7 to 10. And then we're changing the cumulative from 30 to 60.
Correct.
And if someone leaves the district, they're able to, therefore, to cash out?
No.
No. So
No, we do not have that provision with this unit. No, we do not.
So the cumulative just stays at that amount. The only thing that can be used for is for
Sick time.
Okay.
Yes.
And for people who have been working for many, many years, and they had reached 30, which was the prior cap,
Prior max, yeah.
all of that does not get retroactively increased up, is that?
Right. No,
Okay, so
no,
it's just
not
going forward?
Just going forward, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's making, and how does that compare to how we do with other organizations?
It actually begins to work toward consistency, Ken, with others. So the questions you asked do appear in other contracts. But this particular group was really placed in the 8-ball 2 contracts ago, and meaning that they didn't make any economic progress, they didn't make any benefit progress, and what Sue and I and the negotiating team have been trying to do is build equity into this agreement consistent with bus drivers, custodians, maintenance, to some degree the teachers. So we're trying to get this unit to be much more similar to the others, and we just keep on picking away at it. I mean, so that's our goal.
So my feeling of this is bringing us to a more equitable and kind of across the board kind of relationship. I'm very much in favor of that.
Other questions for Sue? Okay.
And then I've
We have a
outlined
motion to approve
the
this?
3 years.
Oh, Denise?
I'll make a motion to approve the Oyster River Paraeducators and Support Staff Association, or PASS, contract as outlined.
Moved by Denise, is there a second? By Brian? Further questions for Sue about this agreement? It's a very amicable, agreement. I think the biggest difficulty was getting the salary schedule right. I think it's consistent, with the bus drivers in trying to get that beginning hire.
Right.
Because I can imagine, in terms of employment, that's going to be, recruitment is going to be an issue. And so I think that was a good move. So
I think we should also share with the board that this agreement passed unanimously with the unit, which is really incredible. And it's the second contract of 3 that we've negotiated where the union members have been unanimously supported. The teachers did last year as well, so pretty incredible to get that kind of support from the staff.
So ready to vote? All those in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor. That agreement is passed.
Thank you.
So all of both of the negotiation agreements are approved. Move to announcements, accommodations, and comments from the district. Are there any? Hearing none. Announcements, accommodations, and comments from the board. Denise?
I just want to commend the music department, music teachers, and all the students that were involved in the concerts. I didn't catch all of them, and I know the middle school one is still tomorrow, but what I caught was amazing. Just really very creative, and just wonderful how involved everyone is, and how many students are involved in, last night in the studio orchestra was unbelievable.
Michael?
About 2 months ago, there was some discussion here about the personal device and screen policy, specifically as it pertains to the middle school, and that was referred to the policy committee for further consideration. I know that we said at the time that we were looking to have that resolved by the end of the year in preparation for the 2018-2019 school year. But thus far, I haven't seen anything, comments in the policy committee minutes about thoughts in that regard. That's probably not one that we're going to get exactly right on the first pass, and so I hope that the policy committee can take a look at that sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And we did bring that up at our last policy committee meeting, and kind of a time frame, I think, is on track, because I think we all share your opinion.
Okay,
So
great. I didn't
I think that will
notice
happen, and we
reflected
did
in
not
the
forget it.
minutes, so.
Yes.
Al?
Well, since there's some kids that are here, and I know next week is Christmas break and you don't have school here, and after Monday you're going to be trying to figure out what to do with yourself, and so I would encourage you to Google Durham Parks and Rec, because next week there's some programs that are free for families and kids. Wednesday there's a family swim at UNH's indoor pool. Thursday, there's open gym time at the middle school, as well as a 6 o'clock snowshoe walk in the Oyster River Forest, led by the Durham Land Stewardship coordinator. And then Friday, there's also open gym time at the middle school, all of which are free.
Other comments? Ken?
I just would want to echo what Dean Rubine had mentioned, acknowledging Superintendent Morse, Dr. Morse. And in our packet is a letter from the Madbury Selectmen. And I'll read that. It says, the Madbury Selectmen congratulate you, Dr. Morse, on the honor of being named the New Hampshire Superintendent of the Year for 2018 by the New Hampshire School Administrators Association and the American Association of School Administrators. The Oyster River Cooperative School District is fortunate to have a strong and tireless advocate for its students and families. We appreciate your efforts to keep the town informed and updated on district issues and plans. We all benefit from your leadership to identify and set goals within a comprehensive strategic plan. We support your initiatives to address important issues as they arise within the district. And I think that's a wonderfully written letter. I think it really echoes the sentiment of the board. And as Dr. Morse's want or personality is, when he mentioned this award, he reflectively turned and recognized other people and recognized the school board, his leadership staff, parents in the schools, and I think that is such an indicator of his character, and congratulations, well deserved.
Anybody else? Okay, district reports, the update on the K-5 science.
Thank you. I guess I would like to just speak a little bit about Dr. Morse's honor as well. Being an employee of the school system now for 33 years and having seen many superintendents, we've always been a high-performing school system, but in the last 5 years, we have really taken flight and have made an incredible progress, and I thank Jim for his work and quite honestly his mentorship to me as a school leader, so very well deserved. Moving on to the science, you have a memo in the backup, just a brief outline of kind of where we're at with our curriculum work around next-gen science. You may recall 2 years ago, the state of New Hampshire officially adopted next-generation science standards as the official science standards for the state, and we had kind of proactively formed a committee that fall to begin looking at K-5 science standards. Last year, we spent the year kind of familiarizing ourselves with things. I was very pleasantly surprised at how advanced our teachers already were in their thinking around next gen and the work that had already been done at the classroom level. This year, our focus is on aligning our curricula with the next generation science standards, with the idea of adopting a new K-5 science curriculum for a fall of 2018 implementation. So far this year, we've made great progress. The thing I think I'm most proud of is that it's been involved every single teacher, K through 5, throughout the district has been involved in multiple occasions, looking at the work we're doing, giving approval. We've developed competencies, which is a new concept at the elementary grade, but it's very firmly embraced by our teachers. They're based on the what Next Generation Science Standards calls scientific practices, or more of the process-oriented skills that a scientist engages in over the course of their work. Things like analyzing data, framing questions, that kind of thing. Very exciting stuff. We've also looked at the content, scope, and sequence and kind of mapped out what the topics are, and have begun the work of aligning all the next-gen standards with our competencies and our content. Our goal is to have that fully mapped out as of the March 23rd Professional Development Day, with the idea that we'd like to come before you in April to say, here's where we're at, and hopefully gain your blessing in that, and then be able to move forward with resource acquisition. And we have, just so you know, we have been sort of parallel looking at resources, so we'll be ready to do both things when that time comes. So that just gives you a quick idea of where we're at. Any questions?
So does the board approve the new? It's like sometimes it's ambiguous.
The language of policy it doesn't require it, but it certainly gives you the opportunity to review it and to. So certainly, I would love to have your blessing before I went too much further with it at that point.
Okay.
Okay.
Questions?
Just not so much a question, but I just think also the extracurricular activities that are occurring around science, and I know there's a middle school teacher who focuses on women in science. There's the robotics, and those efforts are so rich and so support any curricular activities that we do.
Yes, and actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, Ken. One of the things that has been a real positive outcome of the tech integrators at the 2 elementary schools is they have partnered with the tech integrator at the middle school as well as the tech ed teacher, John Silverio, at the middle school, and they've really begun to work collaboratively around sharing resources and identifying how they're going to incorporate STEM-related education. They actually worked on the November PD Day. The library media specialist, tech integrators, and John Silverio worked together to draft a grant that we're hoping to get that will actually, if we get the grant, it would be $10,000 towards materials to be used to support increased programming K through 8 in that way. So yeah, it's a great point. Yep.
Other questions? Well, we look
Thank you
forward
very
to...
much. We're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, superintendent's report, I don't know if you have.
I'll be really brief. I sent you a copy of the mailing that I put out to all the families across the district related to the strategic plan. We will be going into focus groups in January and February, so we should have those done by the end of February. So we're back on track to get that work done. We've worked with many community members over the last 5 years, and names come to mind in terms of a focus group around community members. I would just like to add that does not have to be parents. It could be people whose children have already gone through the system, or community members who've never had children in the system. We're looking for I would say two community focus groups, no larger than 25 each. So if the board members have names that they would like me to consider, just send me a note, and we'll see how fast those 50 slots get filled.
Okay.
And if I could plant another seed, Tom, just related to the board itself, you would be a focus group unto yourself. I'd like to invite selectmen from both towns and the council members from both towns to be part of your group. I think that synergy would be really healthy for the school board and for the towns to have the elected officials in one room. So that's how I would plan to do elected officials.
Great. Okay, business administrator, Sue?
I'll start with the budget update for the current year. Again, my standard format, just to keep you informed of where we are with this year's budget. In terms of percentage-wise, we're ahead of last year, so that's a good thing. 6 months in, it's hard to say, but things are looking pretty good in the budget. Questions?
It looks like not only doing very well, but there'll be a kind of a very hefty balance of unexpended funds if we look at your encumbrances and...
Yeah, it's hard to say because we don't encumber like substitutes, and some of the things are ongoing, but yeah, we anticipate some in the salaries for the paras. There are 3 positions that we reclassified, so those balances are truly balances, and that's about $70,000, so that is a balance. But yeah, it's early, but yeah, I believe we will have a...
So the key is it's early.
It's early, but I just wanted to keep you informed on that. And then in terms of default, before we get to default, I just wanted to direct you to your folders. You should have had several things from me. On the home stretch with the budget, I know you approved a budget at our last meeting, and I'll be back at the next meeting with some forms before our public hearing. That'll be the last meeting before the public hearing. So we did make the $140,000 cuts to bring the budget down to the $44,199,061 figure. In doing and calculating the default budget, we realized we had left the bond payment as it currently is. So we found a surplus in there. So to keep the proposal at the same amount, we put the money in to cover the intercom, the additional cameras for the budget, and there was some funding needed to help the music program. So I just wanted to inform you of that, so that if you were to compare the budget that we presented to you, you will see a difference in that bond and interest figure. We discovered that when we were calculating the default budget.
So the two major issues that the board was concerned about when we were doing the draft budget was Michael raised the issue of the fire panel at the maintenance building, so this would give us the money to do that. And Denise raised the issue of splitting the cameras over 2 fiscal years, and this would give us the money to do that. And then Denise and I were watching the music piece last year, and something that didn't even come on our radar as we were building the budget, and this is what happens sometimes, is the dramatic rise in musicians, student musicians at the high school. As Denise alluded to, had you attended last night, kids were literally on the floor and on the stage. They could not keep all of the kids on the stage. And it really spoke to the issue of the growth of the program. In the multi-purpose room, stage area, if you can visualize that, has really just been, for want of a better word, a giant closet. And we need teaching space, and I suggest that we take that money and repaint and put on the kind of doors we put on in the middle school and the elementary school to create a classroom. And then in the succeeding budget, we're going to have to put in a portable stage extension, because it was truly amazing that they did the kind of work they did last night. So there were a couple of things in the capital budget that we didn't talk about, but after last night, we really need to make a priority. So that's what we would use the difference for. Wouldn't do it all, but it would get us started.
So
This is a question going forward. When do we know what the actual healthcare increase is?
that doesn't come out until May, April, May.
That late, okay.
Yeah, so it's not going to. So I left the budget at the same number that we agreed upon the last time you met and approved it. Just to give you a recap, I included that in your packet. I included this sheet. This just shows you that by department. So those departments were rearranged a bit, so that is a new document with the total. And then now that we've approved both negotiated agreements, I put those amounts that will be on the warrant, and that shows you what the total will be and the total percentage increase. It's under the 3.25, it's at 3.2. So I wanted to give you all of that update. I also gave you this sheet, which I know you don't appreciate, but that just gives you the update on the impact. It does adjust it a little bit, but just so you have that.
Are these two supposed to match?
No, they do not,
So
because
this number doesn't show up anywhere on here?
that number shows up at the top, right up here. See that? 44,199.
Got it, okay.
Then you will see the 54,083, the 64, but the two that you don't have are the food service and so that's why I know you get confused. But that's a great question, because that bottom line number will not match.
Yes.
While I really appreciate the music, obviously, I do wonder, because I'm also hearing about the PE and the need for the climbing wall and that sort of thing, I don't know if that might be a possibility instead.
It's already in the budget. When you approved the budget, we had money.
Oh, it's already in there. Oh.
Yeah, that was part of the presentation that they did 2 weeks ago.
But I didn't realize that, okay.
We
so
had budgeted for it.
It's already in there. Okay, then
Yep.
that's great.
So that's just an update on that sheet. And then I'll bring it to default, unless you have questions on any of those documents. We will have this back at the next meeting again, before the public hearing. So then, I wanted you to have default. I'm not asking you to approve it. I just wanted you to have it before the next meeting, because you do have to disclose it at the public hearing. And the default budget turns out to be $70,508 less than your proposed budget. And it's in different categories. It looks very different, I know, than what we've been talking about, but that's how it sorts out on the form that we will officially post for default.
So that means that if the budget fails, we'd have to cut $70,000 plus from the budget.
So then these numbers will be on the warrant when you get the warrant at the next meeting. And I just wanted you to have all of those pieces before the next meeting.
And just as a general rule, the closer the default budget is to our budget, it's an indication of how tight our budget is.
True.
Exactly.
Correct.
So,
Questions now, or I'll bring it back at the next meeting again, too.
okay, so we are on track to,
We are.
okay.
We are. Just wanted you to have. Any other questions about it? No? We're good? Great, thanks.
Okay, Hannah Jane is ill, but she asked me to read her report, so I'm going to do that. The Senate has been discussing the schedule and looking into whether or not we can make any changes for next semester. All 4 grades are working together along with the Relay for Life Committee to plan a snowball dance, which will take place on the 19th of January. This will be a fundraiser split between Relay for Life and all the grades. The boys' basketball home opener is Kennett versus Kennett is this Friday at 6:45 in the gym. U.S. history students are working hard to finish up their National History Day projects for January 5th. It will be held the day I will, during the day I will send you more information on the times. So we wish you well, and hope you'll be back to the next meeting. So I think that brings us to the Long Range Planning Committee. So Lisa?
Okay. I'm Lisa Allison, and I'm the chair of the Long Range Planning Committee, which consists of 3 representatives from each town. Most of us have been serving on the committee before any of you were on the school board. So it's a very long-serving committee, and perhaps by the end of the presentation, you'll see why. Our goal is to provide the school board with enrollment projections for the next 10 years. And we make every effort to provide them in the fall. Hasn't always been the case, but we provide them in the fall so that they can be referred to in the budgeting process. And we, every year, try to improve and refine the model. I should point out that enrollment in the district peaked in the year 2000 at just shy of 2,400 students. And as of the current year, we are at 2,148, which includes 142 tuition students. The decline over 17 years has been 245. 10 years out, in 27-28, we're projecting 2,097 students, which includes 160 from Barrington, a loss over the 10-year period of only 51. And as you remember from last year, we first saw this flattening of the projections. About 7 or 8 years ago, we started to see the decline, and now we're seeing a lessening of the decline and a flattening. So that's sort of the trend. Methodology. For first grade, we use a linear regression model based on historical births and enrollment trends. I'll go into this more later. In grades 2 through 12, we use something called grade progression ratios to forecast the number of students. The first grade linear regression model coefficients are updated every year. Right now, the primary independent variable for first grade, not surprisingly, is births 6 years before. There are some autocorrelation components, and we continue looking at other independent variables. For years, the housing stock was an independent variable. We added housing starts every year, and about 5 or 6 years ago, we discovered that that was not a useful variable. It didn't help in prediction, so we stopped using it. But we're now looking at things like employment and real estate transactions as possible variables, and we really haven't found anything better than what we're using this year, but we remain hopeful that we'll be able to refine further. Now, as you know, we went to full-day kindergarten in 2016. When you're doing linear regressions and you have a fundamental change like that, you really don't have any data to work with, because we can't use historical kindergarten behavior because now we're offering something different. So we decided this year to use the first grade forecast as a starting point. And then we use grade progression ratios to get back to kindergarten. So we start with the 2016 to 27 GPR from kindergarten to first, which is the first year that we had full-day kindergarten progressing to first grade the next year. And that was a 16% increase, and almost the same in both schools. So we start with that 16%, and then over time, we're thinking that it will become less. In other words, the difference between K to 1 will maybe approach what we're now seeing between 1 and 2, because everyone will know we have full-day K. Kids who are in the district will be in it, and so the progression from K to 1 will be more like 1 to 2, which is more like 5% increase instead of a 16. So we developed the kindergarten, starting with first grade, which we felt we had enough data to forecast, and backed into the kindergarten using these grade progression percentages. Okay. For grades 2 through 12, it's same as always, using grade progression ratios. We use a 5-year average, and we apply that to the enrollment the prior year, which takes into account net migration in and out. A numerical example, if you're new to grade progression, assume 200 students in 5th grade in October of 2013. You add 10 new students who come in by the time they're in 6th grade, but 5 students left and did not come back in 6th grade, so you end up with 205 students in 6th grade, and your grade progression ratio is 205 divided by 200, or 1.025, a 2.5% increase. And that's basically what they are. And then you take a 5-year average of that, and that's what we use. GPRs do account for net new students. More families with children move into the district than move out, as a rule. All GPRs in the grades 2 through 12 are in the range of 1 to 1.05, except 8 to 9, which you see children going to private schools for high school. And then you have your tuition students coming in, so that's another factor. The elementary school split, I just discovered. We started doing that about 9 years ago. Previously, we just projected by grade level and not by school. But this year, because now we're seeing Massway, as you know, pick up students, and Moharamet is having less students, certainly the proportion has shifted from the majority being at Massway to the majority being at, from the majority at Moharamet, now it's at Massway. We used a 3-year average to try and capture this instead of a 5-year average, because we think the trend is going a certain way, we want to capture it. So the 3-year average is 54.4% Massway and 45.6% Moharamet. And the GPR for each element, that is just for first grade.
Then from first grade on back and from first grade on forward, we use the GPRs. So that split is just done one time for first grade. Okay, in the projections, we include a plus and minus range. The way that is developed is by looking at 23 years of forecasts and comparing the forecasted year and what actually occurred, and taking then the absolute value of the difference and getting a percentage. So we have different percentages for 1 year in the future, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 10. And of course, they get higher as you go further out because it's harder to predict. So here are the projections. As you can see, the current year, we have a total of 2,148. We are expecting that to drop only to 2,097. But the other interesting thing is that it really doesn't move too much. I mean, it goes up a little, it goes down a little, but it really stays in the range of 2,100 the entire 10 years, which is not something that we usually see. So we are really seeing a flattening. And again, the range, 1 year out, plus or minus 1.6. By the time you get 10 years out, it's plus or minus 12.7. So that's typical too. The elementary school projections, as you can see, we have 352 students at Massway this year, 343 at Moharamet, and Massway will continue throughout the period to have more. By the time we get to the end of the period, it'll be 357 to 300. So Moharamet, basically the loss in the elementary will be at Moharamet, and Massway will stay where it is, goes up a little, come back down, but for the most part, Massway stays between 350 and 360 range, and Moharamet drops to under 300, really right around 300. Now, as you've been looking at this, there's one number that probably looks really wrong to you. And let me just point out that the horrible thing about being in this position is you do all this work, you decide what methodology you're going to use, and then if something looks wrong, obviously you have to make sure it's not incorrectly calculated, but once it is correctly calculated, you have to not change it because you have to stick with your methodology. And we decided on this methodology, and lo and behold, we're saying that there's going to be 59 in kindergarten next year at Massway. And Denise will tell you, we spent a whole hour discussing this. But here's the good news, okay? Let's look at, because it is an estimate, the range of what it could be, all right? We're forecasting based on first grade, right? Because we started with first grade and then we backed up. So the first grade projection for 1920 is 127. That's the total between the two schools. Now, if we add the average error 1 year out, 2.6%, it could be 130. That's just the average, could be 130. Now, the real question is how many are going to Massway? We're saying 54.4%, but if you look at some of the kindergartens, it was almost 60%. So, I mean, it could be higher. I'm saying it could be 56%. If it is, then the Massway first grade won't be 69, it would be 73. And the GPR, maybe it won't be 16%, maybe it'll be only 4%, more like 1 to 2. And looking at that, we see a high end, maybe 70. Well, here's the great thing about it. 18 times 3 is less than 59, and 18 times 4 is more than 70. So we know we need 4 kindergarten classes at Massway, even if the 59 figure isn't right. So, and it's probably unlikely, I mean, I hate to say it won't happen, because then it will, but it's unlikely that we would go over 70. So we're probably safe with the 4. And that's what we spent an hour thinking about. Okay. Middle school projections, they are really flat. There's not much of a story here. You see a slight decline in the later years. That's about it. High school tuition students. Now, this year we were surprised to see 44 students coming in as tuition students. And we had sort of previously projected a cap of 160, which would be 40 per grade. And we're saying, well, what, are they only going to send 36 next year? How can they do that? But according to Denise, that's more of a flexible number, and it could go as high as 170. Well, we didn't make it go higher because we don't really have any data to base that on, but we did leave the 44 in, so it goes up to 164 for a few years and then goes back down to 160, but it could be higher if we start letting them, if they start sending more and we go up to 170. Obviously, that'll add 10 students to the high school throughout the period. The enrollment from district, again, pretty flat. I mean, you've got 651 now, and you end up the period with 648, getting up as high as 663. So it's pretty darn flat. Yeah, high school totals, you see they get up in the range of 800. Well, they pretty much peak at 823. If we add those 10 kids, you know, it could be 830, 833. And we end at 808. Here are those high school levels with and without the tuition students. Now this chart, the pig and the python chart, you can see that the peak of the whole thing, 2393 in 2000. The number of high school students peaked at 758 in 2001. Of course, they'll be going higher. The numbers in 5 through 8 peaked at 806 in 1999, and the numbers in K through 4 peaked in 1994 at 888. Now, this chart shows the enrollment historically from 1990, and then it splits off from the current year with the pink dots showing adding the standard error, and the yellow dots, or the average error, and the yellow dots show if it's minus the average error. And you can see the blue dots, the continuation line is pretty flat. Just a slight decline. So in summary, enrollment is projected to remain in the 2,100 range for the entire time. With the full-day kindergarten, the size of the kindergarten class is remaining around the current level of 120 throughout the period. The number of elementary school students does decrease slightly. Most of that, or all of that decrease is at Moharamet. Middle school enrollment is pretty flat. I mean, it grows to 682 at one point and then drops to 632, but it's definitely in the range of where it is now. And the high school enrollment, now it's 651 plus 142, and that's 793, and it rises to 823 and then drops back to 808. So you're right in the 800 range. Now, I had some questions that I was asked to address. So the first one is, why are the different GPRs used for different grades? And what are the GPRs for each grade? The second was, what factors go into the first grade regression, and is there a file that shows the data that went into determining the regression fits? And the third one asks for a 10-year spreadsheet of the forecasts for the current year. Okay, so different GPRs by grade. It's a very good question, because, and going back and looking at it was very interesting to me. What do the GPRs reflect? We said moving in and moving out, but what does that really, what causes that? Employment and housing availability. So if Liberty Mutual lays off thousands, that might or might not have an impact. If there's a recession, that can have, if there are a huge subdivision goes in, that could have an impact. So those things differ by year, but they affect all grades. But there are other things that are more specific. The ages of children when parents move in and out of the district. Younger families are more likely to move, usually in. But once a child is in high school, they are very likely to come back all 4 years, because parents are going to make every effort, even if they move, to keep that kid in the district to finish high school. So in the middle school, you have the other dynamics. Finally, you have the availability and popularity of schooling alternatives at different grade levels. So you might have a preschool program with a really good K and 1 that people want to keep their kids in, and so that'll affect the GPRs. Or you might have attractive private school offerings that take people out between 8 and 9. And so those things really does matter by grade.
So I'm sorry, can I ask a follow-up question to that one? So do you know what those are, or are you just seeing that reflected in the averages over time from history of where
Right, that's all it is. We're just looking at the numbers, because we can't get subjective. All we can do is look at the numbers. But clearly, if you look at the one on the bottom, which is K through 12, you see K to 1, 1.25, and then it stays 1.04, 1.05 up through elementary, and then you get into middle school and it starts to drop, and ignore 8 to 9, but when you're in high school, it's almost exactly 1.0. So that's kind of the takeaway. Now, the elementaries are further broken down up above. I've quoted that number 1.16. That was just 1 year, because remember, we just had 1 year going from K to 1, full day K to 1. And you can see how you started up at 130, even at Moharamet, K to 1, 1.4 5 years ago. And now that's down to the 1.16, because, hey, we have kindergarten full day, so you don't have to keep your kid in a preschool so that they can have a full-day kindergarten. So that's why we expect that to settle out, and that's why I used the 1.16 and it was not a 5-year average, obviously. So that's the GPRs. Okay, now the first grade regression. The primary fact, and again, this is changed every year, the primary factors in this year's model are births 6 years before, births 1 year before, first grade in the prior year, and first grade 2 years prior. Now, there is no rationale other than the statistics said this was how to do it, and each one has a different weight. Michael Goldberg, who is a professor of economics at UNH, is one of the original members of the committee when I joined 15 years ago. And he has a database going back to 1969 of births and enrollment. And every year he works this magic. I don't know how he does it. It's a model that I don't see, but I just see the output of it, and it's got all these statistics, and I'm sure he'd be happy to sit down with you and show you what he does. But that's how it's done. Now, the 10 years of predictions. Let me just say that I have provided the spreadsheet. I really can't comment except to say that obviously sometimes you're right for the wrong reason, and I think this has happened. We have really had some pretty close projections and some projections that have been not so close over the years, but for the most part, trying to predict, this is only trying to predict 2017. And remember, every year it's a different model. Every year we have new data and different dynamics affecting us. So this is what we projected and what we ended up with. And if you look at it, well, the closest one was 2009. Okay. And that was undoubtedly right for the wrong reason. So. One thing I should point out that we only started doing separate predictions for the elementary schools in 2008. We completely rewrote the whole model. Actually, David Taylor completely reprogrammed the model, not changing the methodology, but actually writing a new spreadsheet that got rid of a lot of the vestigial things that have been in there in the past. And so we had a nice clean spreadsheet for a while. The high school tuition was only modeled beginning in 2010. So on Jim's spreadsheet that he did, he showed tuition in a separate line, but we actually started including it in 2010, but before that it wasn't included. But we talked about this actually when we started modeling tuition, and we said, well, should we now throw that back in? And we said no, because we predicted a certain size, and the district adjusted for that by, when they saw enrollment declining, taking tuition students in. So if we were right for the wrong reason, that's probably what happened. Okay, we only separated the GPRs and started modeling the elementary schools separately in 2014. And we only first modeled full-day K in 2015 for 2016. And again, we revise the regression equations every year. Other factors are the recession, the decline in births, the elementary boundary shift, which is still working its way through. So all these factors have happened, and our model has reflected the past, but it isn't certainly going to predict. So that's it. Any more questions?
I have a couple of questions, but just would want to start out by thanking you, and of course Denise, for the incredible work that you do and all the others on the committee. It's monumental, and I'm really glad it's you guys and not me. It's, and just questions. So slide 13, and that's where you're beginning the basis of enrollment projections. And I understand how you're doing the GPRs, and that methodology makes complete sense. And I understand how you are predicting near-term kindergarten enrollments using birth statistics that are available to you. And I'm wondering how you go out further than, let's say, 2023.
The kids that aren't born yet.
Exactly.
Yes.
And how you...
That's astute. We actually have another regression model to predict births, and that's pretty much auto-regressive.
So what you're using is kind of the history...
The history of
and
births.
you dial that back into a formula
to
based
predict
on what's
births.
happening?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And then
And by the way, they level out at 89 per year, if that matters.
Okay. And the next question is on slide 14. And I think this one deals somewhat with the GPR, but I'm trying to understand it a little bit better. And let's go to the Maharamit side. And 2017, 2018, we now have 49 kids in kindergarten.
Right.
And then for next year, we're predicting 63.
Right.
So that's a 14 bump up.
Yep.
Then if we go through your the projections, though, we're thinking that there are going to be 50 kids next year in kindergarten, which is one more than the 49, but the bump up is going to go to 58.
Right, that's right. And this is what I'm saying. I started out with 16%, because that's what it is this year. But I'm expecting that as full-day K becomes the norm and the expected, that grade progression will decline and approach what it is from 1 to 2.
Gotcha. Okay,
And so that's exactly what you're seeing.
That makes so much sense. So is it fair to say then what we've witnessed this year is just 1 point? This next year is going to be much more informative, because then
Yes.
we're going to get a line rather than a point. And
That's right. And of course, if you asked Michael, he's going to need 20 points to make a projection. So it'll be a work in process.
But I think the other side of that, which you pointed out, is we're not trying to send a rocket where there's no margin of error, because we have this big margin of error of class size. So if we're approximating, we're still good.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though if we're not exactly right, we're still going
That's
to be
it.
covered. So
Yeah.
that was a very good point. Thank you so much for all you do.
I just had one comment.
Sure.
So this actually, what's really helpful of these projections, especially when you go to the elementaries, it really does back up the idea that we should add the 4 classrooms to Mast Way, because when you look at those numbers,
They're not going down.
they're not going down. And then the second thing, I know this is a mythical idea, that we will actually get rid of the modulars. Apparently. But it looks like actually once we get rid of them, we won't need them again. And then the other thing is, I think what's really helpful is the middle school projections, particularly since they're going through the options of what the middle school, where it would be. It also gives some sense about the size of it, which is really helpful. So thank you.
This is the data that the middle school committee's been waiting for.
Well, we actually have one of our members is on the middle school committee, so I think Rob has probably already provided it to them.
Any questions? Brad?
These numbers all seem to be on the money, except Mass Way seems to be the most volatile of all the the numbers. Now, I know you use housing as part of your formula, but do you take into account, I think of all the 3 towns, Lee is probably building the most amount of new houses. We have houses going up on Kelsey. I know there's a development, I think, on Chestnut, another one looking to come in at Snell, which is several houses up there, but Snell and the other one at Chestnut, I believe, are Harrimet. So.
Hayes. Hayes is in
Hayes, that's what it is, sorry. You know, when you get something where I don't see as much building in Madbury or Durham as they are in Lee, we're kind of, I guess, the growing town. And most of those people that are coming in are bringing kids with them because of the school system. So how does that, you know, if they start building, you know, a 20 or 25 house development, how does that get figured in for projections so we don't have to build another 4 classrooms on the Mastway?
Well, let me say that the way we reflect it, first of all, we do not have births data by address. You can't get it. It's a privacy issue. In fact, even to get births data by month for the entire district, I have to go specially to the State Department of Vital Statistics and get those numbers because I have a legitimate reason to need it. But the fact that the boundary lines were changed for the elementary schools and the fact that we can't get births data by school, by geography, means that we have to rely on this elementary school split. We project, either we're projecting kindergarten or first grade or both. We make a determination every year. Now this year we're only doing first grade. I imagine that will continue for a while until we have some more data on full day K. But once we make that projection for first grade, we apply a split. What percentage is going to Massway, what percentage is going to Moharimet? And right now, we base that on a 3-year average, because it's been 3 years since the boundary line switched, but many of the students continued at the school they were in, and so the full effect of that boundary line switch probably isn't even complete yet. So you've got that going on. You've got housing, which can crop up. There's no way for us to predict it at all. And at this point, we do not use that as a variable. We did in the past. We found that it wasn't useful at one time, and now we're thinking about real estate sales as a variable, which would help. It would certainly reflect your new homes, and it would also reflect the turnover of existing homes, which, probably just as many, if not more, students come from existing homes, as than the new ones. So all we can do is use that 3-year average or, whatever average we decide to use to split them by school, and that's what we do.
Well, yeah, it's tough because there's not enough supply for the demand of housing right now in this district. So, everybody knows they put your house on the market, it's gone in days because people want to come into the district and they're bringing kids with them usually. So it's kind of I know you're going by the formula, but I think there has to be some type of way of capturing that information. Just because of the temporary market now, I'm sure 5 years from now that won't be the case, but right now, the way the housing market is, and
Well, this is one reason why we added Allison Mueller when we had an opportunity to add someone to the committee. And she reports on the housing situation at every meeting, and she's provided us housing sales data, and Michael is the determiner of what's a valid independent variable, what's a relevant independent variable, and he hasn't found it to measure up yet, so we're just waiting.
Yeah.
Denise?
And just to kind of make a comment, even though right now it's Lee, I mean, historically, there was a time when new neighborhoods were cropping up in Durham, for example.
And Madbury.
Yeah. So, I mean, in some ways, that would be reflected, just not in a specific geographical location. But that tendency for the new houses to pop up here, developments here or there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. There will be a New Hampshire workshop on the 20th, which I will go to. And I think you have a packet. In the packet, there's a series of resolutions that I will vote on at that meeting. And so I don't know that we need extensive discussion I think, to go through the resolutions, but I think just authorization for me to go and do the best I can to understand and to vote to represent you. So if I could have a motion to do that.
Okay, so I move that Tom Newkirk will be our school board representative, and he'll use best judgment to vote on behalf of SAU number 5 at the upcoming New Hampshire resolution workshop.
Okay, moved by Kenny, second by Dan. Discussion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. I'll vote to use my best judgment. Well, okay. And I'll report back, because there's some interesting issues in terms of, diversion of tuition money to private schools, building, adequacy aid. So be happy to talk about that when I come back from that meeting. So Andy, thank you for your patience.
Okay, see on this one.
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for having me in tonight to present some information to you guys on cooperative football. The approach that we took when we did this was to take the questions from the motion that was brought up on the November 15th meeting and try to go through them one by one and answer them for you so that you had the information you were looking for. The questions included what implied or expressed obligations would this agreement mean for future boards? What would the cost be to either the district and or parents? What impact would the cooperative have on Title IX compliance? What impact would the cooperative have on other Oyster River programs? What issues related to liability would the cooperative create? And besides Portsmouth and Dover, are there other districts interested in a football cooperative? I'm going to answer that one right now. That would be no. Portsmouth and Dover were the only schools within a reasonable commuting distance that were interested in a co-op at this time. So we're to jump right into it. What implied or expressed obligations would this mean to future boards? I think my take on that was you're looking for NHIA compliance down the road. Following the meeting on the 15th, I had a conversation with the executive director of the NHIA to get some clarity on the language that's in the handbook with the bylaws. The slide you're seeing we felt was the most representative of the bylaw that would pertain to the question that you were asking about obligations down the road. If you read through this, there really isn't any obligation other than deciding to renew the cooperative every 2 years. I'll read the piece here. If the cooperative team application is approved, upon completion of the 2-year period, the schools may reapply for the continuation of the cooperative team. There shall be no limit to the number of 2-year periods in which the schools can apply for approval of a cooperative team. For example, the girls ice hockey cooperative with Portsmouth was just renewed last year for the next 2-year cycle. So that has been approved, and so we'll be going forward with that cooperative for the next 2 years. In my conversations with the director, while it's not, the NHIA's hope is that schools will pursue their own programs, it's not a mandate. And that's a change in language from previous years.
Andy, do you want them to ask questions as you go through if they have a question related to that?
Just jump in and stop me if you want.
Any questions related to the NHIA? Okay, good.
Great. How football impacts Title IX compliance at Oyster River High School. Some important factors to remember when you're looking at Title IX compliance are the percentage of male and female participants, equal access to equipment, facilities, and coaching, and equal opportunities to any scholarship awards offered at awards day, graduation, those type of things. These numbers are based on are taken from Power School and are based on this year's numbers. They are give and take numbers because kids will sign up at the beginning of the year and they don't end up playing the sport that they sign up for. And on the other side of that, kids don't register and sign up at the beginning of the year and end up playing sports. But I think it's a pretty accurate representation with all of those factors considered. With 399 females in the high school, we have 229 participants, which is about a 57% rate of our female population participating in athletics, and 391 males, 244 participants. That's 62% of the male population participating in athletics, with about a 5% difference. So if you throw football numbers into that, we did 20 football players. We did 18 male and 2 female, and we felt it was important to include 2 females because in the research that we did discover that there are presently 2 females that are participating in ORYA football that are in the district, and there's at least 2, and there may be more than that. And again, these numbers are based on the registrations. We took the registration numbers from Power School and added, 18 football male players to the male athletes, and then the 2 to the female, and that goes to about a 9% difference. Any questions with that?
Well, go to your next slide before you can finish this thought before you open it to questions.
Then we did 12 players, 11 male, 1 female. You can see the numbers, 58% female, 65% male, about a 7% difference. And then a projection with just 8 male football players, and we're at 6%.
What percentage puts you in violation of Title IX?
I don't know the exact number of that, but in conversations that we've had, that I think Dr. Morris had with the lawyer, a nominal percentage of football players is not going to.
So the way it boils down, Brian, is there's no hard and fast answer to the question you just asked, and there are a lot of people out there who will claim that they're Title IX experts, and they don't know the law the way that Melissa Lewy does. And so that's why I turned to her. She's the expert in relation to Title IX. And her response was, we gave her the range that we just talked about from, a dozen to 20 kids. And she said, it's not going to push you out of compliance. So being a cooperative football team, we just really didn't think it would be any more than that. We thought 20 was the outside edge, and then we create a floor to see what would happen.
But when you look at those numbers, an Oyster River student playing on a cooperative team gets counted as an Oyster River student.
Correct.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
If a student plays 2 sports, do they get counted twice, or do they get counted once in these numbers?
We just went with the number of registrations, so the kids that were playing 2 sports are part of that number. Is that what you're saying?
They're counted once.
Right.
So if a football player is also playing a spring sport, then the impact to this doesn't
Zero.
impact it.
It's zero,
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah, and if we end up, if a child who's playing another sport chooses not to play that sport and moves over to the football cooperative,
Right,
that also is a zero. So we create, in this straw person that Brian, that Andy's created, we assume these are 20 students who have not participated in anything. So this would be the extreme end.
And it's likely that they're participating in other sports, that most of them are. This is our breakdown of sports offerings by male and female. We have 12 male sports and 14 female sports. The 2 extra female sports are girls volleyball and field hockey. We do have wrestling, which technically is open to males and females. There are female wrestlers in the state of New Hampshire. But we only have one wrestler. We don't have a cooperative wrestling program. We piggyback with Exeter, so our one wrestler will follow them around to their meets. And
So explain the difference to the board
yeah,
between piggybacking a team and a cooperative.
Right. A cooperative agreement is an agreement for 2 schools to form one team. When you have an athlete that just wants to participate, say like the wrestler. We have one wrestler. He follows Exeter's schedule, but he competes as Oyster River. So it's an individual. He competes as an individual in the sport. So it's not really a team offering.
It's just an opportunity that the
Opportunity for
NHIA
him
allows.
to wrestle because we don't have wrestling. And he is very good. He just won his.
Is that open to more than one student, though?
It is. If there were other kids that wanted to do that, there would be a point where if we had enough kids, then we would have to look at creating that option for them.
So I'm just curious, because I didn't realize that. Is there a cost to the district involved, or that student just
No,
pays his
he
own
pays-
transportation or
yep.
whatever?
His mother, he has to have a coach, and his mother is actually the coach.
Oh,
So she's done she has to do all the NHIA certification stuff. And there's no cost to the district with his wrestling. So you can see that there's, the offerings are pretty equal. But, adding another one I don't think would really skew things. I added this slide in with the middle school because I thought it was interesting. You could see that, it doesn't really pertain to this cooperative situation all that much, but you can see that there's a very strong female participation at the middle school, with 56% of the female population participating, as 44% of the boys are. Again, there's 2 more sports added that could be attributed to it, the volleyball and field hockey, but I kind of thought of this in terms of Title IX with these kids coming through to the high school. They're all playing sports that are offered by the high school. So I don't think that the male-female ratio will change all that much in future years with these kids coming through. This is a slide for it's a breakdown by grade of ORYA football players, grades 3 through 8. It should be noted that, I'm sure you all know that, ORY football participants are not all from Durham, Lee, or Madbury. There's kids from other school districts, but, knowing that the surrounding area has, there's quite a few football programs in the surrounding areas, I would say that the large portion of these kids are Oyster River District kids. So 77 total participants. Grade 3 is 12, grade 4 is 13, grade 5 has 10, grade 6 has 10, grade 7 has 12, and grade 8 has 20. That's kind of why we went with the 20 players as the high number for the projections.
Andy, is there any way that of those numbers, how many are not Oyster River kids?
I don't. That's something I could find out. I don't think there's a whole lot, but I can certainly.
Would you like to know?
Yeah, that'd be great.
2.
2. Thanks.
So it's a pretty,
Right here. So if you have any questions,
Okay.
so it's a pretty low number. What issues of liability the cooperative would create, and Dr. Morris spoke about this at the last meeting. You know, having conversations with a lawyer, and then you have I think you all have the letter from the lawyer. You know, the assumed liability is relatively low. Also, the insurance carrier has told us whenever they insure district athletics, they assume football is part of that. Is that correct? I think that's what you and I had talked about, so. Impact of the cooperative on other programs here. The numbers in soccer, cross-country, and golf they've either pretty much over the last 4 years stayed the same or increased. This year we had 71 kids that came out for soccer, and for boys soccer, we actually had to make cuts. We didn't have enough room to accommodate all of those kids. You know, we didn't want to have to do that, but it was going to affect the experience for the masses if we had too many players for 3 teams. I mean, you can see that, especially this year, you know, our numbers are really strong in the fall for male participants. You know, golf was up to close to 20 kids. I mean, that's, you know, and 6 play in a match. So it's, the numbers are, for male fall sports, are very healthy. Practice times and effect on the school day, I thought this was, you know, the academic program is important too. Portsmouth typically practices from 3:45 to 6 on weekdays. Their school hours are very similar to ours, so I don't, you know, I don't see an issue with early dismissal for practices there. And Dover typically practices at 2:45. However, they had said that they will adjust their practice schedule to meet the later start time or later end time for us. You know, games are Friday evenings or Saturday afternoons, and so there's really no dismissal issues from the school day.
Is it an 8 season?
What's that?
Games, 8 games? 10 games?
Yeah.
Both schools?
9, 5 home, 4 away. Yeah, or 4 the other way, yeah. So 9, yeah, they have a bye, I think you have a bye week.
You want to introduce your peanut gallery?
Yeah,
there,
we have the Dover coach and the Portsmouth coach. Thank you guys for coming.
What was the question, last question?
The amount of games?
It's a 9-game schedule. One year you'll have 5 at home, 4 away. It usually flips the following year. There are no bye weeks. If you were fortunate to make the playoffs are a 3-week system, so the max amount of games you will play with.
Thank you.
Did he talk about cost? Was that?
It's coming. So what are the costs would be incurred by the district or parents? If Oyster River approves a cooperative football agreement with either Portsmouth or Dover, it would be based on a per-player cost paid directly by the lead school, to the lead school by the parents of the participant. In conversations with both Dover and Portsmouth administrators, and these are estimates because it hasn't gone to their boards or even to superintendents at this point, the cost, it's at the principal athletic director level. Dover was looking at a more fixed rate of around $460 per player. Portsmouth would take the total budget and divide it among the number of players from both Portsmouth and Oyster River. And that average would be between $500 and $600. So you can see that, you know, both schools are pretty close in terms of numbers. You know, to put a football budget in perspective, most of the associated costs with the operating budget are coaches' salaries, official fees, transportation costs, and reconditioning and recertification of equipment. Those are yearly things that happen. Obviously, every few years or 4 or 5 years, there's a uniform cycle where they purchase new uniforms, and there's other costs that are incurred. But they kind of went on the the hard cost per year when coming up with that per player cost.
So Andy, would there be an increased cost from the year that they replace uniforms? Or
I would say that they probably would. There's opportunities for fundraising with booster clubs, which I think can defray that per player cost. I think, the $460 and $500 to $600 can, with some creative fundraising, would be able to, make those numbers a little bit more manageable.
I got a question.
Sure.
That. Okay, so, because it really has an impact with us if we did a warrant and the timing of the warrant, and also just because one of the major selling points is it's not going to cost the district anything. What happens if a student doesn't have the money to play football and wants to play football?
Well, that would be something that we would have to, we certainly wouldn't want to let someone not be able to play.
So the reason I say that is, like, if the district is going to pick up the money to pay for a student who can't pay for football, therefore the warrant becomes an appropriation warrant, and it has, doesn't it? Because that includes money.
A lot of times the boosters are heavily involved
Right.
with that.
We don't do that with, I'm sorry.
The district may not be, we would work to find
Oh.
funds from the child.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're going to have to insist that people are going to speak to those questions, they go to the mic, because then,
I apologize.
no, it's no.
The boosters are heavily involved with that, like hockey boosters are really involved. So if there's a student that may not have the ability to play due to finances, we would work with the boosters and with other organizations to help them play. So by saying we would help to raise the funds does not necessarily mean it's coming directly from the district.
I'm just saying, because technically, if we put a warrant after the budget meeting.
You have to do it at the next meeting.
Yes, so because again, if we give money, if the district puts money in any way to pay for football, it has to be an appropriation warrant, and it sets the timeline. And if it does not, and in some ways, maybe if you are going to do a warrant, then you allow the warrant to actually be written after the budget meeting, because it means the district cannot put any money into it.
Right, and there's, in Suzanne's example of the hockey boosters, there was a girls hockey player this year that was financially having difficulty, and the boosters picked that up. So
the football team could start a boosters program.
Correct.
And do the same.
Yep.
As hockey is.
Yeah, I mean, both hockey programs, as you know, raise all the money to pay for their ice time with the practice ice. Pretty much all the costs associated with it, except for game ice. So they're pretty experienced fundraisers. And this next slide that I was going to show you is kind of a comparison to the hockey and ski programs, which are also a per player cost. You can see if you look at the boys hockey team, and those numbers are higher because there is a JV program as well, so there's more ice time and equipment and things needed. Their per player cost is almost $1,000. But with the fundraising they do, the average cost is about $275 per player. So there's some motivated people there and kids that get out and fundraise. And the same with the girls at $675. Their average cost is $340, $150. Alpine ski is a varsity only program. This is their actual cost this year is $349. That includes their lift pass, the coach's salaries, everything is included in that. So I would say if there was a football boosters and willing to fundraise, then that would be, a really good way to defray some of those costs. Questions?
Questions for Andy?
I think you did a really thorough job of answering the board's questions, Andy. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything else you guys need, just let me know. And
Thank you.
glad to find it out.
Would transportation to practice be a parent responsibility?
Yeah, the parents that would be on the parents to get their players to and from.
Okay, thank you. Okay, in your, I handed out before the meeting, just maybe to frame the discussion, what I consider 5 possible courses of action that the board might take. Obviously, we can add to this. This is just to kind of get us thinking about where we go in the next step. So I'd like to just go, do you all have that? Okay. I'd just like to go through those and then see whether there's support for some additions to this, just maybe to get us started. Option 1, to take no action and maintain the current position of no football in any form in the high school. Okay, to stop it here, say this is it. We're not going to move forward. 2, to authorize the athletic director to develop a cooperative football agreement that the board would then vote on possibly in January. Essentially saying we pretty much got all the information we need. Let's go ahead and vote. And it's pretty much our call. We're not going to go out to the warrant. We're not going to the deliberative session. It's our call. And we basically have we're pretty much ready to make it in January. 3, to authorize the athletic director to develop a cooperative football agreement and then create an advisory warrant that will be presented at the deliberative session and voted on in March. The board would then base its actions on the results of this vote. This would mean we would take responsibility for creating a warrant because we want to know, we want the information from the district, put it out there, and then essentially abide by the vote of the district. Okay. 4th, authorize the athletic director to develop a cooperative football agreement and encourage the football supporters to create an advisory citizens warrant to be presented at the deliberative session and voted on in March. The board would then base its actions on the results of this vote. Similar to 3, except we're saying we have this information, have it be a citizens warrant instead of our warrant, a warrant that we develop. Okay, and 5 is something I don't think we've really talked about much at all, but it's kind of a modification of 2. But authorize the athletic director to develop a cooperative football agreement. The board would open up a comment period during which there would be an information session on what the agreement entails. The board would then vote on the agreement. It's essentially, again, the board taking responsibility for making the call, but opening it up so that the community might have a better sense of what this entails, and so that the information that we've had could be maybe more widely disseminated to the community and people could have a chance to have input on that. So I'm open to obviously options, more options to this. Denise?
I don't have more options to add to it, but I guess I'm really hesitant to go the warrant route, even though this is an incredibly, in where I'm sitting here, it's a very difficult decision. But my biggest worry is that because it is so complicated, this whole idea of cooperative, to put it on a warrant, I think, for someone that isn't following it, to be able to understand all the nuances of this. Not to mention the fact that the whole warrant, even if we sat here and created crafted a perfectly worded warrant, it could get to deliberative session and someone could step forward and, throw it out it would still stand, but, modify it to such an extent, which is essentially what happened last year with the citizen warrant. So for those reasons, I am not in favor of going the route of a warrant.
Just a question on 5, related to time frame. What would that process look like?
What I thought might be is that if we could have like a draft agreement in early January, and then maybe have a month of, I know it's a busy time, but I'm just, a month where we might hold a information session, or we might create some kind of information packet where, people would have access to the presentation that Andy just gave. People would be invited to comment on it, and then based on that response, and I think it'd be a potential to educate the community on what this is. So I would think, like, say once we had an agreement, this, to have like a comment period of a month, and then people then could write letters, they could comment, and then we would vote. It would kind of open up some space to communicate and So that's kind of what I was thinking.
So the goal would be to target a board vote for February?
Possibly.
Okay.
I haven't worked at it.
Okay.
But a question I had too is like, if this is to be done by, if the opportunity is to be made available for next fall, is there a timeline that we would have to make a decision?
So the ideal timeline is that you're making the decision the year before a sport is to take place. So we're already behind the 8 ball, and I asked Andy to have a conversation with the executive director of NHIAA, and the sense we got is because we're in this process of deliberating that they would may be flexible in terms of that timeline.
Okay, but
so they want as much lead time as they can get, ideally a year before you implement, but we're already past that point.
Okay. Brian?
I'm firmly against the warrant. I mean, we just in our last meeting, we discussed putting an item on a warrant, $4 million of infrastructure on a warrant, and again, it was too complex for it to be worthwhile on a warrant. Same thing with this issue, not to mention precedents. We've had cooperative teams in the past. We have not put them on a warrant. And I don't think when people go to, unfortunately, when the majority of people go to vote, they don't necessarily bone up on the issues as much as we do, or people that really have a dog in the fight. So that is kind of one of my things. The other one is, we're here as board members, and I'm appointed, you're all elected, to make tough decisions. You said it yourself in the last meeting, we're here to make tough decisions. This is a tough decision, not as tough as some of the other ones we've made, but this is a tough decision. This is what we're here to do. We're not here to push our decisions onto other people. We're here at the highest level to make tough decisions. And when I went in front of the board of selectmen and Lee to get this position, I said, I know I'm going to have to make tough decisions, and I'm ready for it. That's why you should put me in this position, and they did. This is a tough decision that we should make on our own as a board. To me, I think the optics looks terrible that we would be shirking our responsibilities by pushing it onto the ballot as a warrant article. I don't agree with it. I don't think that's what we're here for. I don't think that's what our function is here as a school board. I mean, I may be the newest one here, but I get a pretty good sense of how things are run at this level. So another topic that's been brought up is fairness. Is it really fair to put this on the ballot, but not any other sports that we've had? We've never had a sport go up on the ballot. So there's kind of several reasons behind my view, and I would hope that we as a board are able to make this decision on our own based upon all the information we have. We have a lot of information. We've heard from a lot of people, both by mail and in person. I think we all have enough information that we should take on the responsibility we've been elected to do or appointed in making this decision. So.
Al?
All right, well, so I'm looking for clarity because, I mean, I put in I had Wendy throw in everybody's package ORYA's funding. Because why this is so muddy is it's a classic example of a mixed message that's being sent out. So people are saying that, or at least from the warrant that happened last year, there's overwhelmingly the community does not support football. But that's actually not true. If you look at ORYA's budget, 93,200 or 93,000 and change is committed to ORY's revenue by the towns. So Lee, Madbury, Durham all contribute to ORYA. ORY's function is to develop the feeder programs for Oyster River. They really do. It's like, so they develop football. Football is one of them, but they've developed soccer. They've developed lacrosse. I mean, the programs that are coming through ORYA. And so the towns, by funding ORYA, it's about 15% of ORYA's total budget is coming from the towns. And so the towns therefore have allowed a feeder system of football to develop. So it's not really intellectually honest to say the towns have been completely against football. I know. I've actually done the town budget in the last 2 years for Durham. And there's not been a great outcry to the donation of money or the giving of money to ORYA to fund the feeder programs, which includes football. So the problem is, it goes all the way to 8th grade, and then it comes, and to add complication of that, we live in a university town where the university has just spent millions of dollars to upgrade their stadium for football. And so we sit in the midst of that. It's like at 8th grade, for the last 6 years, I've seen football programs come before me, and they say, we want football, and the community says, well, we can't live with the health risks. They could live with the health risks all the way up to 8th grade, but they can't live with the health risks from 9th grade to 12th grade. So it's an incredible mixed message that's sent, and we're placed here behind the table to say, as you know, in any feeder program, one of the benefits to the community is the kids begin to participate in athletics. They get to, the families know each other. You build up the community through that. They come before us and we crush your dreams, is what it's been. I've done it for at least 4 times. Up to this point, there has never been a viable option for football. There just hasn't. It is not, I mean, again, I thought when we went through it before, and we talked about the ideal size for football, Oyster River is just too small. It's not economically viable to run a football program. You just don't have the numbers to do it. And so, as I said before we even started this, a cooperative agreement is the only viable way to have football. So again, it's a mixed message, and what I'm looking for is really clarity from the community. Is it you can't live with football at all, in which case you should not allow the cooperative, or you should not allow the feeder system to ever grow, or can you live with football if it's not at Oyster River? So I don't have the answer to that. So I've always been looking for clarity on that. I've pushed to the warrant article because I think it's the hardest thing to go through, but it really means that you have to really go through all the steps to educate the community about what the program is about. And again, is it that difficult to explain a cooperative agreement? Not really. It's of no cost to the district. It allows the students to go to another school and play football, and that's it. That's not that complex. It's not like explaining the budget. It's not like explaining like any of the agreements that we do. It's a relatively simple thing. To me, I'm really looking for like, there's an educational component to this, really explaining what the situation is to the community. And that is, again, the full story of football, from the formation of the feeder system to the conundrum that we as the district find ourselves in, and what can the community live with. So as I go through these, one, clearly no, I don't think it's fair to not do anything. It's painful for the families, and it's painful for us to keep going through this like Groundhog Day over and over again. And it's unnecessary. Just us saying I want to do a cooperative agreement and the board voting and saying that's it, I don't think that is a good solution either, because clearly most people don't understand how the feeder system is being formed and how the whole thing works. So that, I took 2 off the list. 4, I don't think it's fair to ask the football people to write their own warrant article and defend it. It is difficult to do that. I think last year's warrant article, and as you mentioned, people could change it. That's a classic example of, we own this. We're asking for clarity on what football is. We're asking for the community to tell us what they want. Pushing it off to the community who has no experience writing warrants and no experience defending a warrant article is not fair. So that left me with 3 and 5, and I'm pretty fluid on it. I'm just trying to think of the best way to get the community to respond to us in a holistic way to tell us, where are you on football? So, I mean, I could live with 3 and I can live with 5. I'm not sure which one is the right one.
So, Al, you really summed up a lot of my thoughts on this. You know, the last time that I was part of this board, when we looked at football, we were really focused on the details of how realistic it was, impacts, that kind of thing. The more philosophical conversation around, you know, the community, its support for football, I hadn't committed much thought to, frankly, and what you just described is exactly the conclusion that I've come to. We as a board are sitting in the midst of two nearly polar opposite messages from the community. Allegedly supported by overwhelming support for a warrant that was on the ballot last year. So, you know, because of how vague that was, either group advocating for or against can legitimately point to, you know, the flaws of that outcome, the mandate within that outcome. You know, I don't typically support the notion, as Brian was and Denise were talking about earlier, that, you know, we are elected to do a job, and we should be really reluctant to turn portions of that job over to the community via a warrant. But for me, I need, as you're saying, Al, I need clarity. I'm seeing a lot of mixed messages. I am not confident at all that what the voters read in that warrant last year accurately reflects what we're looking at now, but it reflects something, and so I need to know what that is. I don't like the idea of doing a warrant, but I'm not sure what the other option is. 5 is interesting, but it's, you know, the time frame concerns me. You know, it sounds like NHIA is willing to be flexible, but is a month starting early next year when we have a lot of other things going on, does that really do a service to the, you know, the cooperative that we're looking at here? And is that a reasonable time frame to accomplish that goal? I think it's a legitimate approach, but I'm not sure that we have the time to make it work correctly. So that's...
How much time do you think it would take?
Well, I'm not sure. Because we're looking at having community conversations, that really, to me, expands the need for time, as opposed to presenting a very concise proposal that people can consider on a ballot.
I mean, a modification of Tom's proposal on educating people is to do what we have done in the past and have a community forum around the cooperative. It's, you know, what the conditions are, do it in a single night like we've done other informational sessions, and those people who are interested in football will show up. We know they show up when they're interested because we filled the room on diversity, and you know, we get we get several hundreds of community members when it's budget. I think carrying it off into February makes it really much harder for Andy to get the flexibility from the NHIAA if the board is going to make the decision. So I would suggest we pick a time certain in January and have a forum, allow people to express themselves, and then bring it back to the board for a decision, and not drag it out over 2 months, because I don't think that you're not going to get any more information in 2 months than you'll get in that first evening. Plus, you've got zillions of letters, pro and con, on football, but they're reacting to it as if it's an Oyster River team, so they don't have the information that you already have tonight in relation to a cooperative. So that would have to be formed into some kind of presentation, much like what Andy did tonight, to the community and give feedback. And I would do it in January.
Okay. Denise, go ahead, and then Brian.
Yeah, just to kind of respond to Al, and I certainly, I think you make some really good points. Getting back to the warrant, the biggest fear I have is there's nothing to stop, and we know that there are anti-football people that will come forward and will try, no matter what we craft. If we decided to craft a warrant, they can come up and they can, you know, do what happened last year, and then all of a sudden we have another meaningless warrant. You know what I mean? And that's so. This idea of kind of a number 5 is kind of intriguing to me. The only thing is I don't know what we're talking about is actually authorizing the AD to develop the agreement so much as to have, you know, a community event, a forum, a community forum, and then basically it's more just kind of going back to a decision at the board level, just a little bit more of an opportunity to maybe present to the community what this cooperative would mean, and does that change what people think about football? Getting back to what Dan was saying, I agree that when people voted that down, you're right, it certainly said something. What did it say? I mean, some people, it could have been the fiscal aspects of how much a football program, you know, costs if you fund it yourself. And what we're hearing here is this cooperative is not costing the district money. It's going to be self-pay or booster fundraising or what have you. So it could have been that. It could have been culture. We don't want it here, you know, in our school. So, I mean, it's hard, but I'm just really hesitant to go the way of a warrant just because of that. Because you know, we couldn't stop somebody from getting enough people to change that warrant again into, you know, striking out one word and making it no football or whatever. So I could go more with a 5 and have sort of some kind of a forum and do a lot more publicity to kind of explain about the cooperative and see what kind of feedback we get, given that sort of more education, more explanation.
I'd caution anybody on putting any weight in that Warren article from last year, because not only was it poorly worded, but what if you liked all sports in the district, including football? You liked hockey, you liked soccer, you liked basketball and football. Which one do you check?
Oh.
Right. You couldn't check any of them. So that Warren article really can hold zero weight, because no one could really, most people could understand it. Everybody that walked out of there that I talked to was like, I don't understand that question at all. But if you liked all sports, 100% of the sports, you did not have an option. So I think that was fair and exclusionary, in my opinion. But I don't want, you know, but it sounds like we're a solution in search of a problem, you know, where we're trying to make this more difficult than it has to be. You know, we can make this decision based upon, like, as far as, we could, what do we do before the infrastructure bond? We have a public hearing, correct? Our next meeting, we could have a public hearing, as long as we have the agreements that can be disseminated to the public, and we can discuss it then and make the decision at our next meeting. I mean, that's a fair option, because people do show up when they know football's on the agenda. Both the pro and the cons show up, and we get plenty of email to read. But I just have a hard time with just putting this decision off, making it a longer process than we need to, because I think we're just complicating the matter. We're kind of, I hate to use the term, but kick the can down the road, when I think we know, you know, Dan made a great proposal a couple meetings ago where he had us ask all the questions. You know, the questions were, you know, what implied or expressed obligations would this agreement create for future ORCSD boards? That was answered tonight. What would the cost be of the district and the parents? That was answered. What impact would the cooperative have on Title IX compliance? That was answered. What impact would the cooperative have on other school programs? That was answered. What issues related to the liability would the cooperative create? That was answered. Besides Portsmouth and Dover, would other districts interested in the cooperative? That was answered. Everything we tasked people to do was done, and it was answered. So why are we trying to complicate the matter by dragging it out and making it more complicated than it has to be? I would be more than open to have a public forum on it at the next meeting before the agreement, and so everyone can look at the agreements. We can look at the agreements. The public can look at the agreements, have a nice long discussion on it, and then make a decision then. I don't see a reason why we can't do that, and no one's really said a reason why we shouldn't, in my opinion.
Okay, I'll respond to that.
Okay.
I think that if we didn't make some more effort to help people understand what a cooperative agreement, and simply voted, and people read in the newspaper the next day that there is a Portsmouth Oyster River cooperative football program, they would be shocked that we did that. I don't think they understand what that agreement is. I think they'd be surprised.
Well, that's why the public forum, I think, is a great idea.
Well, I think, but whether you vote right after the public forum, I mean, I'm not saying extend it out months and months. I'm saying take a month to let people, to communicate the information that we have now, so people have a better sense of what this is about. Now, you may say, let's communicate it after the fact, but I think,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think that vote last March was meaningful. I think it said that people did not want a football program in this district, in this school. I think that's what I took away from that. It's pretty resoundingly, I think they said that. I think that there's some education that has to go on about a cooperative football agreement. But I think if we had something, and I don't know that I think we're talking about maybe 2 or 3 weeks. You're not talking about a big difference, but some time to communicate and have something like a session where this information can be communicated, I think that would be to our advantage, because I actually think if people understood some of the things we've talked about tonight, for example, what Al said is that, you have a feeder system with no place for kids to go. A feeder system, paid for to some degree by the district with no place to go. And I think that if people understood something that I think everybody in this board has felt, is that until we resolve this problem, it's going to be an open sore in this community. And people are going to feel a sense of unfairness that football is treated so profoundly differently than other, So I think we have to act on it. I just think to have some more time to communicate to the community and get feedback on this, what a cooperative is, because I think they'd be shocked if this happened,
I agree that there should be some level of, but there's going to be some people that just aren't going to care about it, because they don't have a dog in the fight, so they're not going to care about it.
Yeah.
And they're just going to walk into the ballot, on election day, and the same people that will vote against the budget each year, they don't know anything about the budget, and they're going to vote for it or against it.
Yeah.
Now, I think the issue here is, we did the same thing with Siemens, $4 million. We talked about it for multiple meetings. We've talked about football for multiple meetings. We wouldn't make a decision until we had all our questions answered from Siemens or Jim. Same thing here. And we had just an open forum, a public forum, lasted about 10, 15 minutes, and then later in the meeting we voted on it. This is much less complicated than a $4 million infrastructure budget. So that's where that's how I'm kind of weighing the two sides, saying, how is something more complicated? We put less time and effort into it than well, I shouldn't say that, because we did put a lot of time and effort into the Siemens project, but this, we know about it, we've answered it. Now, really, again, the discussion really doesn't take place until we see the agreement itself to make sure it fulfills all the stuff that we put before. So, I just can't see them put on a ballot, and I can't see, dragging this out more than it needs to be. I mean, if this is a complex situation, we've been talking about it a long time. We know about it. Is there going to be negative blowback? I think any decision we make, there's going to be negative blowback. But the people I've spoken to, non-football people, I had one person come up to me today out of the blue, who I just met today, and asked me about this project. And matter of fact, I asked about this program. And what the thing he said to me, and the thing that's been said to me more than anything else, is they want the parents to make the decision. They don't want to go to a ballot. They don't want to do anything. They want the parents to make the decision. Football is not like in some countries where you're required to be in the military. It's an optional sport to play. So when people think that, everyone's going to get hurt, well, not everyone's playing. But why are we complicating this matter by, and making it look like that we're going to try to legislate parenting, which I know has been said on this board before. We don't want to legislate parenting. We want the parents to decide what they want to do and what direction they want to go in. It's kind of like our math program. What direction do they want to go in? We want to see a path. These parents want a path.
Yeah.
So.
So I ironically, I'm going to disagree with you. This is more complicated than Siemens because it's an incredibly emotional issue, and that makes it more complicated. And so the reason I like a warrant, and I think I have a pretty good feeling about warrants because I've been doing them for 5 years. And any warrant, I mean, anybody could come at any meeting and, you know, for example, the budget that we're going to put, people can make changes to the budget. What's the primary difference if we do it like the way number 3 said? The last time that this occurred, the board was passive. We sat back and did, you know, we allowed people to write their warrant, we allowed the argument to occur, we sat at the table, and we were passive participants in this exchange. And as a result, we got no clarity at all. So I think the primary difference this time is that we are owning this warrant. We're asking for clarity. You know, we're standing up there and we're explaining the warrant. We're more actively engaging with the people that are out there. And I mean, I think I've done a lot of really hard warrants that have come up. I've done the athletic fields, I've done the budget multiple times, and I've defended them. And it's like, so I have a pretty good idea what it's like to stand up there and defend and explain complex issues that go out there. I like it because I find the forums are squishy. There's a lot of people in this community that are not going to come out to a forum that have a definitive opinion on football. They may be older, they may not be able to get there. Sure, they can write a letter, but it's just a squishy solution. I like the clarity of a vote. I really do. I think it means that we have to have a well-crafted warrant. It means that we really have to explain it, that we really have to publicize it, and what comes through is an ironclad, clear result. And I think it's unfair to the people on either side if we don't do it that way. So I really lean to the warrant. And it's not me not being able to make a tough decision, because I've made a lot of tough decisions. It's getting what I'm really asking for, which is what does the community really want? Give me clarity. I can make a decision, but I have to know what exactly you want. And it's like there's just too much information that's flowing and too much emotion that's out there. And I think by us taking control of the question, explaining it, it gives us the clarity we need. So I really, really lean to the toughest of them, which is the warrant, because I think it gives us the best chance of getting the answer that we want.
On any previous, when we had the hockey cooperative agreement, we have a public forum on that? I mean, I wasn't in the board then.
No.
Did we have a warrant article for that?
No.
Then why would we do one for this? I mean, it's a matter of fairness is something that we've always talked about. I mean, is it fair to do it to football but not to hockey or any of the other sports we brought up, you know, we've started here in the school district? I mean, we have equestrian teams, everything else, none of that really comes up in a public forum. So why are we subjecting football to that?
So here's why I think, and these are all fair comparisons. We've gotten some great emails asking that question, and very eloquently. And it's that apparent inconsistency is worth pointing out and worth demanding an answer to. Here's why I feel that the football issue is really unique. We are at a moment in time when science is teaching us something that we should be paying attention to. As an elected board member, unlike start time, I can't look to a number of large influential organizations that have done their own peer review and have consistently over decades said, this is the path that is most effective, that is most supportive of your students. I do believe that this is a parent decision now. And at some point in the future, there may be greater clarity from the American Academy of Pediatrics, from the, from renowned organizations that really shape how we care for our youth in this country. But for the time being, their longstanding positions on football remain unchanged. With that said, you know, I think the community concern over something like over a hockey cooperative, we weren't hearing the health concerns, the medical concerns from the community. We were hearing issues of fairness over competitive play. We took those into account, and I think we felt like we had enough clarity to make that decision. We also are in the unique position that we have a warrant from last year, and I didn't support that warrant, but a large number of people saw enough clarity in that warrant to vote in the affirmative to support it. Now, I don't feel as though that was at all well crafted, that each individual person voted on the same thing, but the fact that there was that consistency and that they did choose to check that box instead of just leaving it empty is an indication of some level of consensus. Is that enough to vote on? I mean, if I were in a position where I needed to vote on that today, I would have to take the results of that warrant very seriously. I don't want to do that. And that's why I keep going back to, we really probably, as Al's describing, last year we probably should have just done a well-crafted warrant, one that people who are opposed to football could say, this is a fair representation of what's being proposed. One who people who are supportive of football could say, this is an accurate representation of what's being proposed. Let's do our own research. Let's search our own values and make our decision that way. We didn't do that. And the result was a further muddying of the waters. So, you know, that's why I feel it's unique. And if it weren't that unique, I would definitely go back to we didn't do it for these other things. Why should we do it for this? But that's why I do feel it's unique. And there's nothing else that's come before us that has all of those factors.
The problem with bringing it to a ballot, though, now you have, we said the max 20 kids playing football. Now we have thousands of people voting on a ballot. Most of them don't have a dog in the fight, you know, don't have a kid playing football. They're deciding on the future of 20 kids, which, again, in a matter of fairness, how is that fair? You know, again, we're legislating parenting. This is what we're doing.
Can I say one thing? 70% of the people who vote on our budget don't have a child in our school, and yet they vote on our budget. So by that logic, if you don't have a child in our school, you shouldn't be able to vote on the budget. That's just not. I mean, I agree with Dan. I'm like, I look at this, it is different. This is and again, those 1,400 people who voted against the warrant last year will turn around if you do 5 and say, wait a second. I voted against football last year, and I told you I didn't want football, and I'm your constituent, and it's overwhelming. What is it, like 1,400 to like 300? We didn't want football, and it's like, so, you know, I think this time really, it's like, if you go in, you have a well-crafted warrant, and you can explain the difference of a cooperative agreement. You can explain, first of all, just the story of the building of a feeder system and then stopping it is really unjust. And I think there's a lot to be said there. Is that enough to change people's idea? I don't know, but I think it's worth making the argument. And I think, again, we own this. I want the clarity from it, and I think the warrant gives us the best way to get the clarity that we need.
I guess to go back to number 5, I see that as kind of a middle ground. I mean, I think it's, you know, and I've gone, as you know, I've been a very difficult decision for me, but I've come to the conclusion that it's our call, you know, and I think we've made tough calls before, but I think that there'd be a middle ground where we would have an agreement, or maybe, Denise say, maybe just have the kind of the shape of an agreement that we could present to the community so that there could become more awareness of what we're voting on, more an opportunity for people who have an intense feeling about it to react to it. And I think a chance to kind of educate people in a way that's not a deliberative session. I think the deliberative session should be about our budget. And I think if we bring football in, you know, that $43 million discussion, $43 million is going to just vanish, and it's just going to be all about football. The deliberative session is going to be taken over by football. And I don't think that's a good way for the, you know, to use the deliberative session, frankly.
I don't mean to laugh, I'm just thinking, remember like with the green teams, it was $15,000.
Yeah, I think.
And $42 million.
I don't think that's the vehicle to educate people on this. I think we should find another vehicle. So, I mean, I think if, you know, to do it like the beginning of January, to take a month, is that such a long time to take? And make Andy's PowerPoint available. Have a frequently asked questions that is pretty much available on the website. Invite people to comment on that, invite people to come to that. Is it, you know, it's not 1,500 votes, you know, we're not, but it's a vehicle to have input. As I think we had input on start time, you know, it's more similar to that. And then for us to make a call. But I think to use the deliberative session for that, I think contaminates the deliberative session. And I think we shouldn't do that. So that's my.
So just from a mechanics perspective, do you think that we could get to a point of having a draft agreement going through that public discussion and being ready to vote by January 17th? The schedule of, the calendar is complicated. There's a meeting today, there's a meeting on January 3rd, which I think, I mean, I don't know if you can pull that rabbit out of the hat or not, of having a draft agreement by January 3rd, and then it's the 17th, and then it's
We
still.
could, I mean, I think that we wouldn't have a finished cooperative agreement by January 3rd, but we do have Andy's PowerPoint, so we can put that up. We can pick up the idea of a public hearing at the January 3rd meeting, reserve 30 minutes at the beginning, let people comment. We can then follow that up with a more elaborate forum. Then we can do a public comment piece on the 17th, and I think you will have accomplished, you know, Tom's objective of educating the community as much as you possibly could in relation to what the difference is between cooperative football and what they voted on last year, which is really sort of the clarity question that Dan and Al keep on coming back to.
So we'd insert another public forum somewhere.
Between the 3rd and the 17th.
But not at the same time as the budget hearing.
The budget hearing is in February.
The budget hearing
deliberative
is on
session.
January 9th.
Oh, well, that's not the deliberative session. That's to get public comment on the budget. Yeah,
that's still
after
another
that.
meeting, yeah.
Wouldn't do that same night. Is that what you were asking, Michael?
Yeah,
I wouldn't do it on the same night.
A lot of things going on.
It is, I mean, true, absolutely true.
So if we were to pursue 5, which I don't rule out, we're going to get requests for physicians to come in and make presentations, and for, you know, for equipment specialists to come in and make presentations, and if we deny those requests, a number of people will feel that that was an unfair process, that the real key issue in their minds that's important to this community wasn't addressed, and therefore it's a false result. How do we manage that?
You do that part during a forum dedicated to football. So I say you have opportunities at regularly scheduled meetings for people to provide comment, just like they always do. Then you schedule a special forum specifically on cooperative football, and then, you know, you open it up for 2 hours. We'll do a quick review of Andy's PowerPoint and open it up to comment, and physicians can talk, and business people can talk, and parents can talk, and we listen to them for, you know, about 3 hours. We've done forums every year that I've been here. We haven't done one yet this year. This could be the one.
Well, and I guess the difference, you know, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here because I feel like I have a pretty strong idea of how this is going to play out on some level.
I think we all do.
you know, it's really going to expose those frankly ugly rifts and emotionally driven rifts within this community. And I don't look forward to that, but at some point, maybe that's necessary. You know, the difference, I think, with the forums that we've done is that possibly with the exception of start time, we haven't invited outside experts, so to speak, to present a particular perspective.
Well, I don't think we take charge of inviting anyone in a public forum. A person who wants to speak, speaks.
Well, and what I'm describing is the request that, you know, researcher so-and-so from such and such university comes and does a PowerPoint presentation.
That's not a public forum. That would be taking, whether that happened at a forum or deliberative session, neither one of those would be appropriate.
Right, right, and that's sort of what I'm getting at, is the choosing of sides in the simple act of managing the forum. And the possibility that people will say, well, if you didn't allow us that opportunity to really thoroughly present our side of the argument in a formal, professional way, then, you know, it wasn't an effective discussion. That's, you know, I feel because we've heard people come to us and we've heard people suggest that we invite people like that to do presentations.
The question is, what is the purpose of that forum at that point?
Yeah.
Is it a forum where we are trying to facilitate a community dialogue about football or about the nature of the cooperative agreement specifically, or is it a forum to facilitate input to this board, which would be making a decision at a vote in a subsequent meeting? Right. And those are two different things. And I think if it's about, either way, but especially if it's about soliciting input and facilitating that input, the key thing is really how you set the tone for the whole evening, kind of like how the diversity forum got off to such a great start because of how the tone was set at the beginning of the evening.
I just don't have a great deal. I see, I mean, I agree, particularly medically, the difficulty is, and I still hear people coming saying concussions, and it's like, wait a second. So the medical part of it, and, you know, and when somebody said science, I mean, my background is in science, and it's amazing to me the medical part of it is complex. It has not been fully explained, and you're not going to do that in a 3-minute soundbite going up at a forum. So I think the forum really will become less informative to us, and it's a battle between football and non-football people. And I just don't.
So how does that change, though, Al, to do it at a warrant? Because you don't. The forum is exactly, the warrant is exactly the same forum as a forum.
Because they are putting their name on a ballot, they vote, and there's clarity to the issue that way. A forum, you get a small representation of people saying, well, I don't like this with medical, I don't like that. And if there's 50 people, am I supposed to judge, like, okay, there's 49 people who were for football, there were 50 people who were against football, all right, from this forum, then therefore the community says we don't want football. And I do it. So, I mean, when you vote, it gives clarity. And also there's a lot of people who are, I mean, it is intimidating to go stand up in front of a podium in a room full of, let's suppose we have a super successful forum and there's 400 people that are there, and I'm asking some person from the community to go stand in front of that podium, in front of that crowd, in a highly charged environment and make a comment. I don't have confidence in that. I think it's a really difficult thing to ask of people. They can go in, they can walk in behind a closed ballot and express their opinion, and they have complete freedom. It reduces the anxiety and it gives us clarity. So it is extremely different between a forum and a vote.
But the presentation part of it is not different. It's the vote that's different.
The vote is different. It allows everyone to express.
I was addressing what Dan was saying about inviting people in and having experts from away and doing presentations. We wouldn't do that in either one of them.
I know, but it's like part of that is like, one of the things that came up is, why do we not vote on the start time. Well, you can't have a more fundamentally different thing. The American Pediatric Association said, yes, start times are beneficial to the health of students. There's clear evidence medically supporting it by a vast array of medical experts. In this case, with football, we don't have that, but we have a growing number of medical evidence showing that it's extremely harmful. So it's not synonymous. So, I mean, really part of the big story is the medical component. And I don't know, I mean, are we as ownership going to stand up there and then explain the medical nuances of it? Or are we just explaining the cooperative agreements? I just don't feel comfortable. I mean, I hate to be sticky about it, but I just feel uncomfortable with that a forum is going to resolve such a hot button issue.
Go ahead. Procedural question. In all of the options that you presented, Tom, you talk about a cooperative football agreement. Is part of what we need to do tonight also to direct, if we do so, direct negotiation with one or the other or both, Dover and Portsmouth?
In order to move forward, we would need to do that. We would need direction from the board, because all the direction we have from the board is delivering this PowerPoint tonight, answering the questions. So to get past this, we would need authorization to negotiate an agreement. Otherwise, we have nothing to explain, other than the concept of a cooperative agreement.
So that's another whole part of the discussion that we haven't engaged in yet, which is which one.
Which one, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
My idea would be that we'd have the athletic director make a recommendation on which one. I don't know.
Especially given.
Oh, gosh.
Or whether come in with the pros and cons of I don't know how we're going to.
I don't know how we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're two outstanding programs. Dr. Morse did ask me to reach out to Krista Butts and try to get a feel for kind of where the parents were leaning. I think the Dover was something that came in later. I think Portsmouth was something that they were pushing for from the beginning. However, she did say to me that, whether if it's a choice between not having football or having football, either program is, I guess so. I don't really have a definitive answer. I think from what I got from her, Portsmouth probably had their familiarity with the coaching staff, and the program is very attractive to them, but again, Dover was not really in the mix early on, so I think it's a difficult decision to make. I think there's, both programs are outstanding. The leadership at both schools are outstanding. There's pros and cons for both, so. I'm not really answering the question here, but.
It's okay. It's okay. Can I take a stab at it? And this is no slight on either school. I really, but the start time and the ending time are really, to me, Portsmouth is aligned with us time-wise. I know it's farther, crossing over the bridge and everything like that, but the time minimizes the loss of academic time, I would hope, for kids that are participating in football. So just because of the time element, the finish time element, I think Portsmouth really would be the more logical choice for us, but that's just my.
The other thing is I think the conversations with Portsmouth are much longer standing, at least recently, than Dover's a very recent development, and my suspicion is that the parents are much more familiar with the Portsmouth option, perhaps, than the Dover option, just based on the past 2 years of discussion. So, and in addition to the time, you know, if we're going to pursue something, I think Portsmouth makes the most sense. Especially given that we don't have the time of, you know, surveying and, you know, really digging into both options, and we really have to act quickly if we're going to act.
Brian, do you have a sense?
Do we have to decide on both, or can we look at both agreements, compare them, and see which one is better and make it part of the public forum? I think that would be a little more fair, because our knowledge with the two programs are somewhat limited. If the parents may know a little bit more, and we probably would like to hear from the coaches at the forum too.
I believe the agreements will be almost
Pretty
identical
similar,
without, except for the cost, that nominal difference that he put forward.
But do we have to decide on which one right now?
No, if you want us to move forward on this, you just have to tell us to do that.
What are the sizes of the two programs roughly?
I think Portsmouth was, 60, and you guys were a little bigger, I think. What's that?
54 this year, but 2 years ago we were 86.
54, yeah. So they're, both numbers have decreased, and, you know, I think that's.
Can you say them, clarity?
Yeah,
Oh, they couldn't hear? Yeah, Dover was 86, what, did you say 3 years ago? 2 years ago, now they're 54, so their numbers are decreasing, and Portsmouth was at?
67, and we were
Pretty steady at 67.
Is that just varsity, or is that varsity and JV?
I think that's the entire program, yeah. And I think all, you know, both schools have freshmen. Dover didn't have freshmen this year, correct?
That's been part of the issue that we're dealing with, is that, you know, we offer freshman JV varsity for 120-something years.
Could you, I think you're going to have to come up. Sorry,
Right.
left it. Yeah, yeah, okay.
Thank you.
I'm Ken Osborne, by the way. I've been the head coach there for 25 years. I've been teaching there for 33. It's a small seacoast, so we've had our eye on what's been going on with the people in Durham and everything else. So we're fully aware of the situation. In our case, you know, we did really well for about, 120-something years. And about 8 years ago, we ran into a situation where it was like a perfect storm. We added a user fee to our students. We got moved back up to Division I. We lost a significant number of students from Barrington. You benefited from some of that. And as a result, we've struggled with stability of numbers. So for about 6 years ago, we went down drastically to about 55 kids in the program. We had 2 classes back-to-back of freshman classes at 42 and 41 that bumped us back up to that 86 number for the past couple of years. The past 2 classes we just got, freshman and sophomore, are now back under 12 in each class. And looking at a program that has 50 kids, you can compete sometimes at Division II and Division III level. You can't compete in Division I safely. At Division I, it's all about, maintaining an older level of kid playing, minimizing injuries, not having to play younger kids too early in their careers. It just becomes difficult. And when Oyster River contacted us about 7 or 8 years ago, we saw at that time we were going to head down in a direction where we had to rebuild. We were one of the most successful programs in the late 90s and early 2000s. And so I said to our athletic director, I says, it kind of looks like we're looking for a bailout. And I says, I don't know that that's going to, help our image. I says, we've been so good for so long, all of a sudden we've got to struggle a little bit, and here we are reaching out to neighbors to help us out. So I told Peter Watton, our athletic director at that time, I think we're going to take our lumps and do the best we can. We got a little bit of help with those 2 classes, but the thing that makes this a little bit different this time around is that we're seeing an instability of numbers, and we're not alone with that. It's happening in Rochester. Portsmouth's gone through some of their own issues. Some of the private schools, Bishop Girton has gone through it, Alvern has gone through it. Trinity's been a huge program for years, and they had to not play this year. They had to forfeit their schedule. So it's happening a lot around, and I think you're going to see more of this type of thing existing in more communities. Obviously, this will be the first Division I cooperative program. The idea behind it is if the state is not going to take a look at what they've done by creating 3 divisions, then if you want us to stay in Division I, we've got to look at all options. The other piece to this,
and I use this as an example all the time, is that, for years, we had the Barrington kids, and the Barrington, kids were a big part of our roster. I put 20 kids on the roster every year. We're now down to somewhere between 4 and 8 kids that we're getting from Barrington that are playing. And the sad part about that is that, John and Joe live next door on the same street in Barrington, and one of them goes to Oyster River and one goes to Dover, and they're playing pickup football in the backyard, but they can't play on the same team. So it made more sense for us. And we had a couple of other options. The idea of reaching out to St. Thomas was an option. And there were a few other communities that reached out to us about this, but I just thought it made more sense that, we are so close. The travel time is so close to where we live. We do share some of the same community kids, that it just made more sense to reach out at this time to see how you guys felt about, maybe you're not in a position right now to fund your own program, but funding is not an issue for us right now. I mean, we have everything in place. It's just a matter of, approving the process of allowing your kids to, take part in the program.
Thank you.
Any other specific questions I can answer while I'm up here?
So I'm going to ask a long question that's partly in response to something that Al said earlier. So it's not entirely true that there's not anything out there from professional organizations about football. There is a American Academy of Pediatrics position tackling in youth football. It is a little bit dated. It's a couple years old at this point, but it does have 7 specific conclusions and recommendations at the end of it. One of which is the culture should change to one of zero tolerance of illegal head-first hits. And another one is efforts should be made by football teams to have athletic trainers at the sidelines during organized football games and practices. So I'm curious about those two, how they fit in with.
We all have to follow the rules of the National Federation of High School Sports and specifically football. There are rules built into it as far as targeting, helmet-to-helmet contact. Those have to be officiated, obviously, by the officials that are placed in charge of the game. There's also a mandate at the NHI level and the federation level to be a trainer present at all games. We have a trainer that's in our system, in our school, that is in attendance at every game. And we take it a little bit higher level is we have an EMT who's a past student of ours that we pay a small fee that goes on the road with us because he has an affiliation with our kids that gives us a little bit more support on the road as opposed to having to rely on the trainer that's in place for the other school.
I'm wondering, just in terms of fairness, since we have the Portsmouth coach here, whether he might come up.
I have to play PAF every single year, so by means, we're good friends, so you can ask PAF anything you want.
Okay. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And being so patient to sit through such a meeting. But
I liked the last meeting, it was much quicker. So I guess everything Kenny said as far as training staff and stuff is the same. We have, they're from Access, correct? Your trainer?
We have 3.
Okay, so we have a trainer from Access, and they travel with us everywhere we go. So as far as, is that fine? We're all about the same in that, and everyone follows that around here. Most are from Access, where they're contracted out, but we have someone on site all the time.
What about Michael's question on the head hits, Mike?
Culture should change to one of zero tolerance.
Yeah, that's, I got it, and Kenny knows this. I mean, so I'm on my 30th year coaching. I know, I look younger than him, but, so in 30 years, the game's changed immensely. And he will tell you his practices have changed immensely. Ours have changed. Neither one of us almost ever hit in practice anymore. It's all technique. With that said, if you want to talk about concussions and injuries, we had 2 concussions this year. We had 2 concussions last year. Our girls' soccer team had 3 concussions this year. So we have done everything, and again, I'll tell you, I know Kenny's done everything he can possibly do to keep that out of the game. So in that aspect, I think we're all on the same page. We want, I think both of us, we just want your kids to have a chance to play. I helped Sanborn start a team about 7 or 8 years ago, and I helped Epping Newmarket start a team. We're just looking to have these kids have the opportunity. I do not teach now, although I have that degree. I always wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a teacher because of my coaches. So that's where I come from, and that's how we run our program. As far as an overall program, we are very community-oriented. Our kids are responsible for doing 2 community service projects, P's greeters being one of them for sure. Although we found out this year it's not good when they're going away, it's better when they're coming home. But I mean, there's both of our programs are very similar. The only difference is we're much smaller, so we need kids more. No, I'm just kidding.
Quick question, do either one of you do any baseline testing?
It's mandatory that every school does baseline testing. The minute the kid comes in as a freshman, we test them then, and we test them whenever there's an injury until they pass and get back to that level. There's also a state protocol that's in place that once a kid, the concussion issue is out of our hands. Once it's been diagnosed by a trainer, it's no longer part of our decision making. It goes directly into a protocol system, which the trainer, the doctor, and the state all work together to clear the student to come back. And that's one of the reasons why, we want to travel with one of our own people. I don't want to have to rely on a trainer from another school making a call about one of our kids. The other part of it is that, Paf mentioned that there's been a lot of changes, and there's going to be more changes coming. The information that everybody's getting right now on concussions is being fed to you through, the programs at the NFL level. And there are some studies that are locally going on right now with some high school, but it's kind of a drastic situation. You got to keep in mind that when you're talking about what went on in the NFL, these are people that played football for over 20 years. There were no concussion protocols. Most of the damage in most of those individuals took place in what they call post-secondary concussion. In other words, I have a concussion, I got put back into a game before it completely healed like any other injury, and I got an injury on top of that. That's where the majority of the damage was done. On top of that, we were one of 4 schools that took part in the HUT program that the University of New Hampshire started.
I was actually going to tell them that you did that. Give you a promise.
I'll take it, Paf. I got it. We were invited along with a few other schools to take part in a program in which our kids for the last 2 years, 30 of our kids, wore monitors inside their helmets. And those monitors recorded every impact that hit their head, whether it was some kid flicking a towel off their helmet or if it was an actual contact in practice or a game. We were assigned a contact person from the study who followed our team and stayed with our team. She literally stood on the sideline with a monitor and said 23 just took a 7, 28 just had a 60. And we monitored every single contact that was made for 2 years in this particular group. The idea behind the study was we took those 30 kids, split them in half. 15 of them were taught tackling techniques with no helmet and shoulder pad for 20 minutes twice a week. The idea being is that when we re-taught them proper technique to keep their head out of the contact, that eventually through that training they would go into games and they would do it automatically. It would become a reaction to them. We are waiting for the data on that, but I just talked to Eric Schwartz the other day, and he'd tell me that the data is looking pretty good. We saw a significant number of improvements in our ability to limit the amount of contacts we have. And like Pap said, for the last 7 years, the football team has not led any one of the programs at Dover High School in concussions. We are never number 1. We don't hit during practice that much. I mean, we do have kids that bump into each other once in a while, and that's why we wear pads. But our concussions, for the most part, happen in games. And we had 3 total this year in all the levels that we played. Girls soccer right now is still number 1, and cheerleading is number 2.
Okay, great, thank you.
And just to clarify something I said earlier, and Michael, I'm familiar with that report as well. This is what I've come to refer to as the 2 different conversations issue around the football discussion. I have no doubt that everyone that we've heard from who has come to talk to us is doing everything in their power to keep kids safe. What I've been reading recently that's been released since that study or those recommendations were released is that there is no amount of training, equipment, anything that can, eliminate the developmental issues surrounding what they call these subconcussive impacts. Now, I want to be clear, I don't feel like the Oyster River School Board is the right place to figure that out, okay? But concussions are not the concern that we're hearing from the other side of the community that I think we need to take really seriously. The fact of the matter is we're in a transitional period. We're learning something there's apparently not yet enough known as a result of these studies. Maybe it's the scale, maybe there's other factors involved, I don't know. So that's where I've come to the conclusion that it needs to be a parent decision. You know, this is still a legitimate sport that is still supported by our state athletic association. You know, people are doing their best to keep these kids safe, and as Al said earlier, we live in a community where all 3 towns are directly funding an organization that is running a youth football program. And we are, you know, as a community, we've created this situation where it's inherently unfair to these kids who have played this sport, and that at 8th grade, all of a sudden, poof, your opportunity goes away. So these are the issues that I'm wrestling with. So, you know, until we get clarity that, you know, these are flawed studies or the recommendations have changed. And in fact, one I read recently was, the recommendation was also a sort of a catch-22. It was, well, we think that there shouldn't be any contact until, you know, kids reach the age of, I don't know what it was, let's say 16. But if we don't allow contact, we can never teach proper technique. So, you know, there were these two sort of contradictory recommendations at the end of this study. Point being, we don't have that clarity right now. And again, what I think we need from our community in terms of dealing with this issue in a timely way that, you know, we can't, I don't want to kick the can down the road because there's another group of kids that isn't going to get an opportunity. We need a metric that we can look at that tells us what this community really wants and what this community really believes. And until we have that, I don't have the confidence that our decisions are going to be based on real data.
So can I ask a question of the board? My question would be, is the board ready to authorize administration to develop a framework cooperative agreement that could apply to either Dover or Portsmouth? Fundamentally, that question needs to be answered. The rest of it follows. I think that was what Michael's point was when he was talking procedurally. So for us, administratively, we need that question answered tonight.
I'll go a step farther and try to capture, I think, what is kind of where I feel like I'm hearing us land. Feel free to amend or reject outright. But I'm going to move that the board direct the athletic director to develop a proposed cooperative football agreement with Portsmouth with the intent of discussion at a community forum on January 10th, 2018, and a board vote on January 17th, 2018.
So,
if nobody seconds it, it dies.
Could you read it again?
Yeah, that was like, I was trying to digest all of it.
I move that the board directs the athletic director to develop a proposed cooperative football agreement with Portsmouth with the intent of discussion at a community forum on January 10th, 2018, and a board vote on January 17th, 2018.
The dates one more time?
January 10th and January 17th. Okay. January 17th is a regularly scheduled board meeting.
Okay.
And the purpose of the forum is to explain what a cooperative agreement is and its conditions to those present, and to take any input that they have regarding it.
Could I just ask a question about your motion?
Of course.
Why not a possible agreement with the two, and then we could decide on the third, which of the two? Is that, or do you think it's pretty much a...
There's not much time between now and the third, given the holidays.
Okay.
I would prefer to look at the two.
What?
I'd prefer to have the choice between the two.
why don't you get a second, because you got a motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
and then you can discuss it.
Okay, second, okay. And you would prefer...
I'd prefer to at least look at the two and kind of see what they have to offer, and like to see what the parents might have to say too.
Yeah.
You know?
Denise?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that because I don't see the necessity to restrict it at this point if we're going to have this forum. Part of that discussion could be, you know, like Brian just said, maybe there's some other thoughts that we're not aware of in the community in favor of one or the other, so.
I mean, the parents might like that idea of parenting kids play with parenting kids. So I don't want to knock Dover out when that very well may be an issue with the parents. Maybe it isn't. I don't know.
It is.
We won't know until we have a public forum.
All right, well, I will move to amend my motion for it to read with Dover no, it can't be and, with Dover or Portsmouth.
Do I have to second that again?
No, I think he's amending
Somebody
his
has
original
to.
motion. You just support his
Yeah, it
amendment.
says,
You have to say verbally you support that amendment.
I support
It seems like you were saying you wanted to see both,
Let's see both.
but I think this is or.
Well, you mean,
You can't, I mean, we
look
can't-
at both,
Look at both. We
right.
can't-
look
To
at-
include
Look at a
both.
cooperative agreement with Portsmouth and Dover. Both.
Okay.
The agreement has to be with Portsmouth or Dover.
Right.
I know what you're
Right, but we're not
saying.
at that point we decided. We want to look at both of these.
We get
It
it.
should be,
too late.
agreements plural.
Yes.
So two
yes.
agreements for our consideration.
We follow it.
Okay, can I comment on your motion?
Yeah.
Can you slice off the second? I find the second part is unnecessary to the first part, which, first of all, since you've mentioned the holidays, there's two separate parts to your motion. First is investigating the actual cooperative agreement, but you've made the jump now to actually moving to option 5. And not only that, you've moved it to the 10th, and we're coming to the holidays, so why the hurry to have the forum on the 10th? So I don't support that at all. I think that, it seems rushed. My thought would be to slice the whole second part of your motion off and just say, investigate a cooperative agreement with Portsmouth and a cooperative agreement with Dover, what they would each look like.
Was it investigate?
Develop proposed cooperative football agreement.
Develop. I'm fine with the developing of each part. The second part, I can't support, actually.
I'm good with the second part.
What?
I'm good with the second part. That timeline works
So
for me.
I included that because my bias is that this is something I don't see needs to go to a warrant vote. I don't think it belongs necessarily in the deliberative session, and there is a lot of other stuff going on between now and then that deserves its own attention with the budget and bond hearing, with the deliberative session, and I would prefer to have this wrapped up before that.
You got to get it off the table. Right.
So it's moved in second, so you're,
Well, just, a comment. And I'm in favor of that. Again, Al, as much as, I do hear the arguments that Al and Dan have made in terms of putting it on the ballot. I much prefer not to do that. I'm just, instead of specifying the date of the forum right now, because we don't know what other conflicts might be out there for the 10th, again, I think just to go forward and say, develop this proposed agreement with both. We'll take it up again on our January 3rd meeting, and in the meantime, direct Dr. Morse to look at what might be the best date sometime in January. I suppose, it's got to be in January.
The only evening commitment we have that day is policy. So it actually is an open evening. So good dartboard throwing, Michael.
yeah.
But it goes into a holiday weekend, is what you're saying? Is that what you're?
People are leaving, you're going to come back, and it's like, we come back, the 3rd, is that right?
Yep.
It's a week after everybody comes back.
Yeah, it's not enough time to
forum. It seems, again, if you're looking for a fair way that you're going to judge things, that doesn't seem particularly well thought through to me.
So if we don't have it done in time for the January 17th board meeting, the next board meeting is not till February 21st.
We could add a meeting.
Yeah, you could always add.
We can add a meeting just for this wonderful, we're in this, like the Groundhog Day, yes. We could add a meeting just specifically to make a decision on football.
I think Michael's pretty.
I'm not volunteering to make that change, so somebody else needs to amend my motion if you want to do that. As of right now, I believe the dates are in, so.
Okay.
So in order to accomplish a more reasonable timeline, you'd have to add a special meeting in February specific to football, if you wanted to push off the forum to later in the month. So your first Wednesday's deliberative session, and I'm in Tennessee for a specific reason on the 14th.
Mentioned earlier.
And that gets you to the 21st as a meeting, so you'd even have to go off a Wednesday to have a special meeting in February.
Denise?
I guess I'm thinking we could still go ahead and do the forum on the 10th, because the PowerPoint is set to go. We use that PowerPoint. We can certainly, if there's other additional information that we would want to be included in the PowerPoint that's not already there, such as, for example, the information about ORYA, we certainly could direct, Andy and Jim to include that information in the PowerPoint. And again, it's not that we're making a decision that night, but I guess I'm hearing that maybe it does make the most sense to just go ahead, do it, have this forum, include that, because I think that is very important information. So we want to include that information that we're presenting. We present that PowerPoint, that information, and then just let people speak to it, and then bring it back on the 17th.
I can support that. I think to move on it.
I mean, we've got to get to something else. This is like...
All right, only because I want to stay here longer, could we read the motion again?
The board directs the athletic director to develop proposed cooperative football agreements with Dover and Portsmouth with the intent of discussion at a community forum on January 10th, 2018, and a board vote on January 17th, 2018.
Could I just ask, Andy, is that possible from your standpoint? Could you stand? Yeah.
I mean, I think it is, just have to sit down with the, other athletic directors and principal, but, the only thing that they may have to take their proposal to the board as well.
Sure.
So that's something that I would need to find out from them.
Okay, I mean, if...
Yeah, I'm pretty confident they will, Andy.
Yeah, I think
before they can do anything, we have to take action, so,
Yeah.
we're...
So I think they're motivated to do this, so I think, my part of it and, the Portsmouth and Dover athletic directors, part of it is not, it's just getting it to that board level approval. But I think that's doable.
Well, and I would be comfortable, reviewing a proposal that was...
Between athletic directors, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Just kind of a draft.
Sure.
And if I understand this correctly, in voting on this motion, we are effectively voting for number 5.
Yes.
And eliminating the other options, correct?
Means we will not go to warrant.
Correct. Okay, I just want to make sure my understanding was correct.
Okay.
Recognizing that it's entirely possible that there will be a petition warrant that we will need to address anyhow.
We'll just cross our fingers. But it doesn't happen.
I'm ready to vote. So what, maybe read one more time, just...
Sure. The board directs the athletic director to develop proposed cooperative football agreements with Dover and Portsmouth with the intent of discussion at a community forum on January 10th, 2018, and a board vote on January 17th, 2018.
Okay. We ready to vote on this? All in favor, raise your hands. See, 4 in favor, all opposed, 2. So motion carries. Okay?
We need a break.
Yeah, it's a 5-minute break.
Yep. What are we doing next? I gotta find out. Oh, my gosh.
Okay, given the lateness, what I would recommend is we just vote on the other actions and not have a non-public on the superintendent's evaluation, put that off. It just seems, we're not, we're gluttons for punishment, but maybe not.
I would suggest our superintendent, the superintendent of the year in New Hampshire should be his evaluation.
That would be the easiest one. Just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Hard to beat that.
Yeah. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the 2018-2019 school calendar? Denise?
I motion to approve the 2018-2019 school calendar.
Moved by Denise, is there a second? Seconded by Al. Questions on that?
Sorry, I'm not going to make this easy.
Okay.
Climate change.
Climate change?
Climate change.
Seriously?
2 days down in October, another day down already with 3 snow days down, and we're not even to January 1st. I don't think we should be planning out to June 21st. I'm not gonna. I don't want to change it this time around, but I think we need to seriously consider starting earlier, eliminating some of the holidays in the middle of the year, if we're going to have more interruptions in our school year.
I love it, Michael. We've had this conversation in both New Hampshire and Maine, and tradition always wins out. But I'm more than willing to have the conversation with my colleagues again. The calendar that you have presented is coordinated with both Somersworth and Dover because of the voc school participation of our kids. So in order to collapse what you're suggesting, which I conceptually, intellectually, absolutely agree, is like moving mountains.
What about moving teachers' workshops?
I think that would be something for another year.
I completely agree.
But you just lobbying.
There's been a lot of work. I know there's been a lot of work going into this proposal, and
Okay.
But I would suggest the follow-up to that would be that rather than superintendents have the conversation, that you would want to have representatives from the three school boards, Somersworth's and Dover's and us, because that's really our catchment area for our voc school kids. It would take all three school systems to have that conversation. Otherwise, our kids are disadvantaged if they keep a traditional schedule and we move towards global warming schedule.
perhaps this could be a discussion item for a future meeting.
Okay. So I think we have it moved and seconded. Are we ready to vote?
I just have one quick question. Are teachers' workshops, are they those days?
Yeah, they're all coordinated.
They're all coordinated as well?
Okay, ready to vote? All those in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor. The motion to approve the calendar is passed. Okay, then we have list of policies, use of tobacco products strictly prohibited, and that's ADC and JICH. Denise?
I'd like to make a motion to approve policy ADC, use of tobacco products strictly prohibited, and JICH and R, drug and alcohol use by students.
Moved by Denise. This is for first read, right?
Yeah, first read.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Dan?
And then I have
Okay, Denise?
one comment. So actually, during our policy committee meeting, I think on the ADC, the use and possession of, or its use of tobacco products, but in the new policy proposal, its use and possession, I think we ran into the snag of saying, but adults that may come to an event, and that I thought we were going to take out the and possess for the generic one and keep it in for the students.
I thought you were right.
Yeah, because you can't say that somebody coming in off the street to watch, say, you know, an adult to watch a basketball game or whatever, they may have cigarettes on their person.
Okay, I didn't remember that, Denise, but
Yeah.
if you and Kenny remember it, so what would the change be?
Oh, I think we were going to take it out out there because it also, it comes back, it's in the JICH, which is drug and alcohol use by students, I think.
Exactly. And this is a first read, so.
It's first read, so.
We can make that change.
Can you repeat that?
What it is we would just take out and possess, or, well, in the heading, it's use and possession of tobacco products. And then in the first paragraph, it's no person shall use, we would just take out the and possess.
Got it. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Denise. I do remember that now once you said it was in the title. Sorry about that.
Okay, so,
You made the motion, someone second?
Yes.
Yeah.
so we can still vote on it and then have that, approve it for first read and then still have that change made. So all in favor, please raise your hand.
I'm sorry, can I ask? So we talked, there's a long definition of what a facility is, and the title includes grounds and talks about the grounds of the district. Do these policies also extend to school events that are held at other facilities that are not district facilities?
Those are those other facilities, they have
So
their own policies.
if we have an event at UNH or at some other location?
Their policies govern, I mean, if it's our kids on our school buses, our policies, but when they step onto other people's property, it's their policies. However, athletes sign a agreement that they won't be using drugs or alcohol or violating those policies. So our policy follows our athletes. So
if our students are at an away game,
and they smoke, they would be in violation of the athletic policy, which
if they're spectating at an away game.
Any school event, our policies would cover them. So if we bring kids to a competition someplace else, they're governed by our policies, our rules, and they know that going in. So if we catch a kid doing something at a Lebanon cross-country meet, we would
So
hold them
Michael's
accountable
question
to our
wasn't
rules.
about official meets, it was about whether if our students were attending it as a spectator.
So I think it takes place in C. If you see, students will not consume, smoke, possess, under the influence of substances before, during, and after school hours at school and any school building, school property within 1,000 feet of school property, school-owned vehicle, any other school-approved vehicle used to transfer kids from school or school activities off school property at any school-sponsored or school-approved activity, event, or function. So I think that...
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, thank you. Yeah.
I think that's where that is. Okay.
Okay, we're ready to vote on these? All in favor, please raise your hand. 7 in favor, the policies are approved. Committee updates?
Dare you.
Public, hearing none, okay. All right, public comment?
It's Dean again. Hey, I just wanted to say something quick. I thought it would be nice when somebody wanted to put something in the minutes at a meeting, you could just add it to the SAU folder with the email and the regular mail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One, you talked about school zone signs. They have them in other towns. I believe they should be posted here so there's no question as to where the school zone starts, stops, and what the enforcement will be. Two, we've had people on our town council that have repeatedly gone after ORYA funding, tried to reduce it because of football. I heard that referred to here. We even had one person on the council wanting to take away funding for the refurbishment of Father Lawless Fields. So we have a number of adversaries with regard to sports in Durham. The thing that convinced me was the fact that hockey costs twice as much as football. As far as I'm concerned, we should be encouraging football, and I think hockey's more dangerous. To speak to Travis Roy, as far as the discussion about football goes here, 100% of the people against football, 100% will not have children playing football. They either don't have children, they aren't in the system, they wouldn't let them play football, or they don't want to play football. 100% of the people advocating for football have kids in the program. I'm not a big one for telling people what to do like that. I believe that we should be a little more tolerant, a little more inclusive, and if these families and people want to play football, get to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, so we have the list of future meetings. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Moved by Michael, second by Brian. All those in favor? We're adjourned.